What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Monday show, gang. Good afternoon. Hopefully the first day of the work week wasn't too brutal for anybody. Nothing crazy happening out there. It is a gorgeous day here in the New York area. Looking forward to taking Joker for his evening walk after we get everything sorted out for a 6:40 lock for this 8-game slate that we're here to talk about. Should be a nice evening, taking a stroll later on. Then we get down to watching some baseball, hopefully finding some good results. We had some good results come in over the weekend. Our pal Tall Tale popped into the Discord and had turned 70-something bucks into 600-something bucks with some good results over on DK, and then later on sent out a tweet or an X saying, just giving a little shout out with multiple screenshots from some successful days with some first place finishes in here, and looks like a few grand coming in over the course of the baseball season so far. So congrats to Tall Tale. Appreciate the shout out there, buddy, if you're here yet. Love seeing those come in. Anytime you guys win something, hit the @rotoscouts Twitter handle with the screenshot if you're on the into the Twitter thing. At least drop it into the Discord so we see it and we can congratulate you. Love seeing those come up. Stephen B's here. Cujo's here. Clint Wood and Kenneth Woodhouse are here. What's going on, guys? Anybody have anything exceptional over the weekend? I was down on Saturday. I think I mentioned it in the Discord. I was at my niece's dance recital down in Lakewood, New Jersey. It's a fun night. Really cool, like old theater from the 1920s. One of those old, like, regional theater type places. And they had a great show. My niece was in two of the dance numbers, one for for ballet and then one for hip hop dance. She's taking classes in both of those. Woody C, stop yelling. I'll yell all I want to. Woody was admonishing me for yelling about the start of the show in the Discord. Tunes in, immediately tells me to shut up. You can put this on mute and just use the closed captions. It's probably how I would handle my listening to my voice. But anyway, fun night there. Went to dinner with the parents after that, and then nice easy Sunday. Did some work on the back end of the website and on the projections model. I actually dropped in some updates. If you saw the first round of projections that I put up somewhere around 12:30, 1 o'clock today, some changes for some notable players. I started threading in. I'm not completely done with the full league yet, but I started threading in some updates to some of the back end, the backbone projections, which is usually June 1st is when I let some actual things change on the back end there. So I did change up some guys. You'll see some changes here. Maybe he wants you to use an accent. We'll skip that. You can hear it on some of the Latin names, but yeah, we'll skip over that. John Oliver did too good a job last night of doing that accent, the Italian accent, when he was making fun of himself about being an Englishman talking about giving advice to India. My Italian accent's not as good as his, otherwise I would have busted one out. Good to see you, though, Demon Nat. Colin Sutherland's here. First profitable NASCAR Cup race in a long time. There you go. Good job on that one, buddy. Who won the NASCAR race? I have no idea what's going on in NASCAR. Could be Travis here, tuning in from the tower crane. Love it. It sounds like Travis had a not as successful of a NASCAR day. One day maybe we'll have NASCAR projections and stuff up on the site. I believe Ace Mind has NASCAR sims and optimizers at least, though. Let's see. Yeah, my auto login is expired. There we go. Let's see. Nope, I'm lying. No NASCAR up there yet. PGA, college basketball, baseball, WNBA, NBA, MMA, and NFL up for Sims. Optimizers, same group of products. But I'm sure one day, in addition to rotoscouts having some projections maybe for NASCAR, maybe those guys will have some optimizer and sim products for NASCAR. Either way, check those guys out. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month. 3-day free trial for everything. Pop the little banner up to take care of the rest of that for the next little bit. Kickbacks and so on and so forth. Subscription's not up yet, but coming soon. So keep an eye out for that. But right now, everything's up on the site. Got some updates in. Really interesting 8-game slate. I'm looking forward to talking this one through. I'm not entirely sure what I want to do on the mound yet. I think it's a deep but kind of challenging pitching board. So we'll take a good look at it. Aaron Davis enjoyed Ace Mine with the promo code and enjoying the product so far. Love to hear it, buddy. Whoops. Travis jumped in on that comment that I was trying to click on. Where'd that go? There it is. Good to hear that, Aaron Davis. Good to see you, bud. Colin Sutherland, Austin Cindric got gifted a win. Cindric. Same weekend his dad's suspension from their Indy team started. Oh, I didn't realize there was a father-son NASCAR Indy pairing there. Interesting. Do not know enough about NASCAR outside of just being dangerous, making lineups something from time to time. But typically that worked off of some old stochastic projections and putting those things together and then just being able to game theory it and get to some uniquely owned lineups. Had some success in the few NASCAR tournaments I've entered. But yeah, as far as actual NASCAR knowledge, very thin. I think it's a cool sport, though. I mean, I do like the whole, the baseline of how the cars have to be tuned in for the different races, and then the tweaks that guys can make to actually gain advantage over one another, and like the crew aspect of it, the mechanics of it. Even more, I think, than the actual racing itself. I think is just kind of fascinating. One day, or in another life, maybe. Anyway, let's take a look at this Vegas board here. It's an interesting one. We've got a big debut for the Orioles coming up as well today. Connor Norby in the lineup, batting ninth. So that'll be another interesting spot. Yet another just premium prospect. But before we get to that, starting at the top here, the Brewers at Philadelphia. Interesting game there. Zach Wheeler going for the Phillies. Has the Brewers checked down to a 3.6 implied total. On the other side, the Phillies, heavy favorites. 5.11 implied total. Going up against Bryce Wilson, who gives up runs but has not been atrocious. Hasn't gotten blown up in his different appearances. Typically doesn't pitch deep into games. We looked at him the last time he pitched in terms of just hasn't given up. He gave up 3 earned runs in that one, actually. Prior to that, he had not given up more than 2 runs in any of his appearances all season in a hybrid role between short starts, bulk relief appearances, and a couple traditional relief appearances. So it's looking really good on the Vegas board there. But I could see it being one of those days where you go to Philly and then, wow, surprise, how are we only looking at 3 runs here in the 8th inning after Bryce Wilson's out? So a little bit of, or in the 6th inning, I guess I should say, after Bryce Wilson's out. Little bit of concern on that one, but I do think there's a ton of upside there. We're not going to shy away from it. Mets and the Nationals in the next one, 8-run total there. Fairly close on the board, 3.92 for the Mets, 4.16 implied total on the other side for the Nats. It's Mackenzie Gore going for the Nats against Tyler McGill. Mackenzie Gore is, I think, very good and has some upside here against the Mets. And Tyler McGill, not an untalented pitcher, so definitely a little bit of upside for him against the Nats. They're 2 interesting ones from the mid-board. The Orioles, with the aforementioned debut of Connor Norby, they're going up against a tough pitcher in Kevin Gausman. He's really interestingly priced if you're willing to roll the dice on Gausman, who has had a few blow-ups this year against a very, very good young Orioles team. That's an interesting spot price-wise. I think he's going to have ownership that kind of reflects that price advantage that you get on him. But on the right day, Kevin Gausman could still spike a big game even against a good team here, and I think that's reflected in the Vegas line. Just a 7.5 run total, 3.84 implied total for the Orioles, 3.74 for the Blue Jays on the other side because Grayson Rodriguez is on the hill for the Orioles. So really, really high-end pitching matchup there. Could limit the offenses on both sides, but you could definitely see the Orioles on the right day putting some runs on Kevin Gausman. Like I said, he's hit a few bumps along the way this season, and in some other spots, he's been pretty terrific. So I think he's underpriced even for the performance this year. Tigers at the Rangers. Eovaldi going up against Tariq Skubal. Pretty sure we're getting another short start from Eovaldi. Don't really have him on the board there. That said, it is a very low run total, 7.5 runs. Also pretty even up on the board in Vegas. 3.83 implied runs for the Tigers, 3.75 on the other side for the Rangers. Skubal's been one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in baseball, basically since going back to last summer. So really interesting spot for him. He's pricey. Eovaldi, again, I think we're just probably getting like 4 innings, maybe 5. But he threw only like 30-something pitches, so high 30s over 3 innings in his first start back. So some question marks about any kind of upside out of Eovaldi there. But you can see definitely they like him and whatever comes out of the Texas pen behind him to kind of keep that Tigers lineup in check. The Cardinals going up against Justin Verlander there at just a 3.48 implied total. Verlander definitely looks interesting to me. 4.61 on the other side for his Astros going up against Kyle Gibson. He has their power somewhat wrangled down. And they've obviously been up and down outside of the 3 stars at the top of the lineup and some production from a couple guys later. 4.61, I do think they're interesting here, but they're a step down from some of the premium offenses. The Coors Field game, 5+ on pretty dramatically on both sides. Actually fairly even considering that it's the Reds against the Rockies. 5.53 on the Reds side. And then the Rockies coming right back. 5.59 implied total at home for the Rockies. 11 runs on the board in that one. A full 2 runs higher than the next highest game. So, Coors Field, kind of obvious. It's a pitching matchup between Ryan Feltner and Andrew Abbott. So I think we've got some gettable pitching there. Doesn't really look like a spot I want to grab either arm. I think we're just talking about bats. The Reds are going to be exceedingly popular. Some of the Rockies are drawing a little bit of interest. But as usual, they're going to be a little bit under-owned, even in a home spot, even where they're drawing actually a slightly higher run total than their opponent. At least they were earlier when I put this together. So, interesting spot for them, as usual. And some interesting young right-handed power bats in that lineup. So we'll see what we get when we get the confirmed version. But one to keep an eye on, I think. Padres going up against the Angels in an 8.5 total there. 4.61 on the Padres side. They're going up against Tyler Anderson. Whoops. Very gettable spot for them. And then Matt Waldron taking the mound for the Padres up against the Angels. He's got them checked down at a 3.99 implied total. That could be another really interesting pitching spot because he's affordable and he's been pretty good with that knuckler and the rest of his arsenal. So I kind of like that spot for him against the Angels. I could see it also not really succeeding, but he doesn't give up a ton of hard hit. He doesn't give up a ton of power in general. So even if they do succeed, it's not like they're a really good station-to-station type of a team. So a few hits, I think there's upside there for the Waldron play. Last game on the board, the Giants against the Diamondbacks. Another low-end pitching spot. Spencer Howard going for the Giants, making the full start this time, unless something changes. They've been a little bit annoying with swapping in some openers at the last minute a couple times, including the last time we thought Spencer Howard was starting. But right now, that's what it looks like. 4.34 implied total for the Giants. And then the Diamondbacks, 4.87 implied total, showing some power against Spencer Howard in the profile that he put up. He was good in the 4 innings that he pitched in bulk relief in that last one. But I think it's a really targetable spot with that Diamondbacks offense. And Vegas seems to agree, 4.87. That is the 4th highest implied total on the board. But it's also, the 4th highest. There are 3 teams that are higher, and there's a couple competitive ones in the Padres and the Astros. But I definitely like the looks of the Diamondbacks, and that's the 2nd highest implied total on the board. Sliding over to the pitching board. Just talk through some of this. Lone Wolves here. Eovaldi on a pitch count. Yeah, do we have the actual count? They did change it. Miller's starting now, and Howard's in relief. God damn it. I hadn't seen that yet. Ooh, Brandon Marsh placed on the 10-day IL. So I guess he won't be in the lineup. I still don't have that. Okay, MLB.com's got it as TBD now. So you're probably right. It probably is going to be Miller opening. And then Howard in bulk relief again. Either way, Howard was getting a short innings projection there anyway, so we're probably not far off. Maybe it comes down slightly. But I don't think he was an option anyway. He's just more of a target. If you do get a high-end opener for the first little bit there, it maybe takes away the quality of the first inning and change for the Diamondbacks lineup the first time through for their first, their top hitters. So maybe a little bit of a downgrade given that situation, but I still think that Spencer Howard is targetable here. So not really going to go away from it. Not going to change anything now. I'll take a look at it after the show and see if I can get a quick update in on that if necessary. But top of the board, I think pretty clear cut. Zach Wheeler all the way up 10-6, 10-7. Totally worth it. Not far behind, though, Tariq Skubal. 10-4, 10-5 price-wise. The projection, within a point on both sites. Either guy seems really, really worth it, even given the matchups. The Brewers not bad. The Rangers pretty good. Both of those pitchers are just elite. They're top form, in top form, and at the top of the board projections-wise. I have no issue with going to either one and going to them pretty aggressively here, even regardless of the matchup. Grayson Rodriguez going up against the Toronto team that's largely underperformed all season. 10-1 on FanDuel. Totally playable over there. He's got a lot of upside. And then 9,400 on DraftKings. I think that makes him pretty appealing there. I could see a world where Toronto gets to him. There's some guys in that lineup that have been performing. But overall, I think his quality overtakes them, and we saw that in the line in Vegas. So love the price on DraftKings. Happy to pay the 10-1 on FanDuel. In the same game, the next man up, Kevin Gausman. This is what I was talking about. You can see the gigantic gap in price between him and the guys above him and several of the guys below him. So I just think you got to have a little bit of faith in Kevin Gausman and his general overall quality that we've known him to pitch at in the last few seasons. Take a few bumps in the road this year and forget about him and just book that quality for that price. 8,200, 8,000 makes a lot work on both sites. Definitely in play at worst as an SP2 on DraftKings for 8,000. But I love the option having him that cheap, and he's not crazy popular, or at least on the ownership projections that I was looking at. So I think that's a really interesting option. Mackenzie Gore for 98, 9,000. Like I said, against a gettable Mets lineup, I have no issues with that. Mackenzie Gore is really good. Justin Verlander against a really bad St. Louis team. Like that option plenty. 9,200 on FanDuel, 8,800 on DraftKings particularly. If you're not going to Kevin Gausman for 8,000 because you're worried about the Orioles, maybe you take Justin Verlander for 88. Otherwise, you're going down, I think, probably to Matt Waldron against the Angels. Tyler McGill's on the board for 72 as well against the Nats. He's a different story on FanDuel. 9,600 for McGill on FanDuel. It's a tall order. He's good enough to pay it off against that Nationals team. It wouldn't completely shock me by any means, but I think I'd rather have a lot of the guys above him on the FanDuel slate. At 72, he's a bargain on DraftKings, though. Him and Matt Waldron are definitely very interesting if you're looking to go cheaper than the Kevin Gausman player, or if you just don't have faith there. Either one of these guys could fill that role very, very easily. I don't like this at all, even though there's a little bit of projection meat there. 7,422 points for Andrew Abbott at Coors Field. Just doesn't really feel great. 6,800 on DraftKings. He's in the bargain bin. I'm sure he'll be fairly low owned, even with the really low price, given some of the better options. I wouldn't call you completely crazy to throw maybe a couple darts at it, but I really don't like it. There's a pretty significant gap in projections between some of these guys. Kyle Gibson against Houston, just he could pay off even the FanDuel 8,500. He's had upside starts certainly throughout his career, but I don't love targeting that Astros lineup. 6,500 on DraftKings, I think, puts him a little bit more on the board. It's not completely nuts. So given the cheap price, I think he's a better bargain bin option than going to Andrew Abbott at Coors Field. But I don't love it. Tyler Anderson against the Padres is just kind of, I feel like he should be cheaper, especially on FanDuel. 8,800 feels a little bit steep. Bryce Wilson against the Phillies, again, hasn't really gotten nailed for runs, but I think it's more just a situation where, like, that's why maybe a Philly underperforms tonight. There's an explanation for it, but I don't think that equals really rolling the dice on Bryce Wilson shares. But at 62 on DraftKings in that SP2 bucket, if you wanted to say that he's, as big a dart throw as Andrew Abbott at Coors Field, I can get behind that theory for 600 less. Not a priority value option by any stretch of the imagination, though. Ryan Nelson against San Francisco, it's similar. You know, given another $400 discount and 1,000 separation from the Andrew Abbott at Coors Field play, going up against the Giants, that game does have that hefty run total. The Giants are getting 4.34 of it. We've seen Nelson a couple times do all right. We're going to have to take a look at him. At that DraftKings price, I guess he's in the value bin easily. Evaldi, I just don't think we're getting enough innings to pay off even 76 on DraftKings. 9,000, certainly not on FanDuel. Howard, no. Feltner, no. Pretty easy at the bottom. But this is what I was talking about. I think it's just a really, when I said at the top, I don't exactly know what I want to do with pitching. Right now, I just have a pricey hand-built lineup in with Matt Waldron there just because he was the pitcher that fit. And I like that as a value option. That's on FanDuel. But yeah, I don't think there are many places to pivot on FanDuel. I wanted to have Kevin Gausman in that spot, but depends on kind of what comes out in one of those lineups. But there are interesting ways to build from the middle there. But if you want to go up to any of those expensive pitchers on FanDuel, you're definitely sacrificing some bats. And a lot of them are looking, fairly similar. There's not a ton of daylight between even these projections. From here to there. And ceiling-wise, there's some similar ceilings mixed in there. There's also some similar risk, even with some of the really, really good pitchers. And at these prices, if you catch a couple of runs, it really dings the upside. So I think it's a really interesting pitching board with a lot of different directions that you could go, depending on what you're trying to do. You can play it lineup by lineup, obviously. If you're building one, I think it's a lot more challenging. But it's a good day, I think, also to take a look at maybe some single entry contests just because of that. Because if you do land on the correct pitching spot, and a lot of those guys are probably going to come up under-owned, I think it could be really interesting. Give you a nice trajectory toward the top of the board. Clintwood. Why doesn't Clintwood get yelled at for yelling? What's up, buddy? How do I feel about Grayson in DK single entry? No issues with it. Yeah, Grayson Rodriguez, any format. Perfectly fine. I don't know what his ownership looks like, but yeah, taking that discount and applying it into a lineup and getting a nice little bat bump instead of going to one of these guys, pay $1,100 less than Skubal and even less for than Wheeler. Absolutely. No issues whatsoever going to Grayson Rodriguez here. Projects out very nicely. You are dealing with, and we'll see it in just a second when we get to that. I'll pop to it now. It's a relatively low strikeout Toronto lineup, even with some of their struggles. You could see a lot of mid-teen strikeout rate here, but he's high-end enough with his swinging strike rate, with his just overall stuff, to find a few strikeouts and a few additional punch-outs along the way there. So not your typical matchup for the Blue Jays necessarily to limit strikeouts, but they do that effectively. That would be your one risk. Otherwise, you've got, again, a lot of underperformance here. A couple of guys are pretty much on form at the top, but it's a limited bottom end for the Blue Jays. I definitely think that Rodriguez could have a good day for you here in one lineup. Mamba says, who the hell decided to schedule these games today? These times suck. Yeah, what do we have? We have a 6:40 start time, 6:40, 6:45, 7:07. 3 games in the 8 o'clock window, 8:05, 8:10, and then the Coors Field game at 8:40, and then a gap till 9:38 and 9:40 for the last 2. One of those busted up Monday schedules for sure. Got the Phillies lineup in. That. I'll check Twitter real quick and see if we got anybody else, and then we'll start breaking this thing down. I do know that we have to make decent time, but Locke is in. Locke's what? 6:40, so we got 3 hours. I think we'll be okay. Rocky's lineup is in. Let me do that one real quick, too. Oh, wait, they're facing the lefty. Needed this one. All right. Rockies, Tovar, Rogers. Nope, no McMahon. Elias Diaz. Just give McMahon the lefty. What does it matter? There's Montero batting cleanup is interesting. Diaz third. No Chris Bryant either. Brenton Doyle moves up to that spot. And Jacob Stallings. And Bouchard there. Goodman up a spot. And then, the hell is Trejo's first name? It's not Danny Trejo. Alan Trejo. That'd be awesome if they had Danny Trejo at third base. Oh, David Dahl in the lineup for the Phillies. I didn't even notice that. Did I put that on the site that way? Oh, no, that just dropped. That's why. Got to get David Dahl in the lineup here. I did not know he was on the Phillies. That's probably, I guess, did they just call him up for when they put Marsh on the IL? Oh, come on. All right, so Dahl, min price on the DraftKings slate, not on the FanDuel slate. And Connor Norby was also not on the FanDuel slate. All right, so that Rockies lineup is in. That's done. All right, first game up. Bryce Wilson, Zach Wheeler. One of these pitchers is not like the other. Zach Wheeler, kind of a no-brainer in any matchup. Pitching phenomenally. 2.32 ERA, a 3.15 xFIP, a 29% strikeout rate, 13.7% swinging strikes. Doing his usual thing as far as limiting power and premium contact, just 6% barrels, 34.6% hard hits, just 86.7 miles an hour of exit velo, and a 1.71% home run rate so far this season. There's a reason he costs 10.7 and 10.6. Brewers on the other side, not really drawing all that much power. Even Rhys Hoskins just at a 5.18. They're drawing a little bit of projection, a little bit of run creation upside because they've been good, this lineup, especially creating runs. So there is a little bit of quality there, but again, they're at just a 3.6. So that's just individual quality rather than the idea that they're going to really string together a bunch of runs here. So not really a spot where you want to overload on Brewers. I could see getting a few stacks as a contrarian option because there are some very, very good players in there, and they come at decent prices given the matchup. But it's just as a contrarian play. It's not even a spot where you have to hedge necessarily. If you say, all right, Wheeler's definitely beating the Brewers here. I want a ton of Zach Wheeler. I would probably grab a few hedge stacks, but I don't think it's mandatory. Wheeler is that good. So it's just if you want the contrarian shares or if you want the hedge position. Last time out, Wheeler went 6, faced the Giants. 2-hitter, 6 innings, no runs, 9 strikeouts. Start before that, he gave up 2. The start before that one, he also gave up 2. That was against Texas and against Washington. But he pitched into the 7th in the Texas game. Struck out 5, walked 2, just 2 earned runs on 5 hits. In the Washington game, he pitched into the 8th. He went 7 1/3, gave up 2 earned, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks, 3 hits. Rough one against Miami. It was his really lone bad start of the year. He gave up 6 earned runs back on May 12th. That was a bumpy one. You don't want him on a night like that. The Brewers obviously better than that Miami team, but we're not going to really sweat that, I don't think. Well, that's a change. When did that happen? Is that going to be another opener follower situation? Are they going with because he doesn't have any innings on him, does he? Right. Yeah, so that's just going to be an opener again. I didn't realize that either. That also changed from this morning. Now it's there. They've got the Brewers TBD on MLB.com as well. Labs did change it up to Koenig. All right, so he'll be in there to just try and get Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber in the first inning. And then he's handing off, I assume, still to Bryce Wilson. We didn't lose Bryce Wilson, right? Yeah, Wilson's still in bulk relief. All right, so it's the same thing I said before about the opener situation where maybe if you want to give Jared Koenig the credit to get Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber here, maybe it takes the top off the Phillies for the first inning, the first time through the order. And then they come in against Bryce Wilson, who, again, has not been terrible this season. 3.19 ERA, but a much more targetable 4.62 xFIP. A lot of contact allowed, 19.6% strikeouts. It's not brutal. It's not one of these guys striking out 12, 13% and giving up just the world of contact like Chris Flexen or somebody. But that's not any threatening kind of a strikeout rate, so there should be plenty of contact for the Phillies' premium bats. 9.5% walks is way too many. A 1.23 whip is pretty high. There's no swinging strikes or really called CSW. Giving up a 45.3% hard hit rate on a pretty fly ball trajectory with a handful of barrels allowed, a decent amount of exit velo, handful of home runs. Stuff Plus doesn't like them. There's a lot of reason to believe that this is a spot where the Phillies could definitely get to Bryce Wilson. But between a Wilson who has performed again in his opportunities this year, he's given up runs in most of them, but it's up until the last game, the most recent game, across 7 starts and 48 total innings. It's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 starts, 7 relief appearances. He gave up a maximum of 3 earned runs. That was in the most recent game. 4 total runs, 6 hits in 4 innings. Struck out just 1 walk, 2, gave up a home run. That was against the Cubs. He's given up a home run in 4 straight. One of them was a bulk relief appearance. That was at Fenway against Boston. He went 5 1/3 in that one. Struck out 7. Gave up a home run, but only 2 earned runs on 6 hits. I'm not advocating for the Wilson play, like I said at the top of the show. I don't think, given the other quality in the bargain bin today, or at least the other similar risk in the bargain bin, I don't think you necessarily want to draw down against the Phillies with Bryce Wilson when he loses the upside for the win bonus in most situations. Just looks a little dicey there. On FanDuel, I don't think you do it at 65. On DraftKings, it's really, really dicey at 62. But there is the idea that Koenig could come in and hurt that top end of the Phillies. Right now, he's at... bear with me, by the way. I'm using the... I switched over to the new player pages. Fangraphs has an alpha up for their new player pages, and it's actually pretty good. The layout is a lot quicker to switch between. I just don't know where the clicks are quite yet. So Koenig this year, just a 19% strikeout rate. So it's not like we're dealing with an ultra premium pitcher, an ultra premium lefty who's super high strikeout, who's definitely going to get in there and shut down Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. He's given up a pair of home runs already in 25 1/3. He's got a 2.13 ERA and a 4.12 xFIP. And where are splits now? There's splits. This year, where's the change? Well, whatever. Actually, one of those home runs did come from a lefty. He's faced 40 lefties. He gave up a home run. And he's got and he's allowed a 270 average to fellow lefties. 381 xFIP against fellow lefties. Striking out 17.5 against lefties, 20% against righties. So, yeah, maybe he comes in and has one good inning and limits these two. But is he definitely going to do that? I don't think so. And then you get down to there's Bryson Stott. Maybe it hurts Bryson Stott even if these guys succeed. There's the idea of some limitation there, but it's pretty limited with him. The Brewers bats, if you do choose to go there. Let's see if we got any kind of lineup in. Nope. Nats and Cards are both in. Some interesting ones there. Bryce Turang off the top, 20 stolen bases on the year, getting on at a 367 clip. He's been very, very productive over 213 plate appearances, but he still only cost 48 on DraftKings at second base, 31 on FanDuel. Any other matchup, that's a killer bargain. That's a really good spot. William Contreras, 5,800, 3,900, appropriately priced for a catcher who hits second every day, has power upside, 9.7% barrels and 56.5% hard hits this year. He's got a 151 WRC plus with 8 home runs on the board. Christian Yelich, 55.2% hard hits this season. 6 home runs, 8 stolen bases, a 226 ISO, creating runs 70% better than average over his 143 plate appearances. Willy Adames holding steady at 260, 338, 450. I figured by now, we're up to 260 plate appearances. I figured by now we'd be looking at a significantly lower average, lower on base. He's having a really nice season so far. 9 home runs, 8 steals, a 190 ISO, 126 WRC plus, striking out just 21.5%, drawing his walks, making very, very good contact. Jake Bauers for 41.27. There's some cheap lefty pop there, but it's the wrong matchup for it. 5 home runs, 7 stolen bases, a 194 ISO, dead on league average creating runs. Rhys Hoskins, revenge game for Rhys Hoskins maybe. 5.18 in the home run model, 4,300 on DraftKings, 3,100 on FanDuel. Don't chase Rhys Hoskins' revenge. If it happens, it happens, but him facing the Phillies has nothing to do with it, and facing Zach Wheeler and looking just for home run upside is kind of not a very good idea. 5.18 is not a good mark for Rhys Hoskins in the home run model. Usually against the league average pitcher, he's going to be in the high 7s, 8s, 9s, and beyond, depending on who the pitcher is. And against even good pitchers who are just, more susceptible to home runs, he's going to typically have a much stronger mark than that. Sal Frelick is a contact-oriented hitter, 2 home runs, 7 stolen bases, dead on league average for run creation. Playable if you're stacking this team, not a priority. Joey Ortiz, I believe, leads Major League rookies in FWAR, if you're into wins above replacement. Not really the best stat in my mind, but I do like what he's done with the bat. 5 home runs, 2 steals, a 211 ISO, 155 WRC plus. 36.8% hard hits is effective enough with 6.4% barrels. Doesn't strike out. 14.3% strikeout rate. Draws a ton of walks at 13.1%. He's been very, very good. Third base only on DraftKings, 3,700. I like him a little bit better for the higher price at 3,000 on FanDuel. That's a higher relative price than 37 on DraftKings, but at least I get him at second base as an option on FanDuel, so I kind of like that. If Blake Perkins is in the lineup over Jackson Chourio at the bottom, he's playable. 5 home runs, 6 steals for him. I prefer Chourio. There's more talent there, but either one, mix and match your way through, and if one of them's in the lineup instead of Sal Frelick for whatever reason, same thing. On the Philly side, even with the lefty starter, I have no issues with Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper, lefty-lefty against much better lefties. So against one who's going to be giving up some contact to them, I have no issues. And if it renders them a little bit under-owned, so much the better. I'm happy to take the spot. 57, 4,000 for Schwarbs. He's got 11 home runs, a 170 ISO, underperforming a little bit in terms of power in the results. This is a couple behind the pace that I would expect over 268 plate appearances. The ISO is definitely low for Kyle Schwarber. But you can see he's still creating a ton of runs, gets on base like crazy from the leadoff spot, so he pays off that leadoff opportunity. 16.4% walk rate. He does strike out a ton, but he's a 3 true outcomes type hitter, and he's totally worthwhile up at the top. And the premium contact, the barrels are down pretty significantly over the last 2 seasons, but there's some happenstance in there. You can see he's still murdering the ball, 54.9% hard hits. It's back in line with 2022. So I think there's plenty of upside here for Kyle Schwarber, and he's doing good things anyway, even if he's a little behind the curve for power in terms of his results. 162 ISO for JT Realmuto could be a little bit higher, but he's got 7 home runs. He's slashing 272, 314, 435, creating runs 12% better than average. Another catcher who hits second, very, very good opportunity for him, particularly where you have to play the position. Love him hitting between Schwarbs and Harper. Needs to get on base a little bit more to pay off the position in the batting order, but he's done really good things at the plate. He's pushed his hard hit rate up this year. Striking out a little bit, slightly more, walking slightly less, but not a giant difference. Harper at 61.39 has 14 home runs, a 255 ISO, creating runs 49% better than average, followed by Alec Boehm, who is all the way up at 6,000 now on DraftKings. $3,300 on the FanDuel slate. That's a lot more friendly of a price on FanDuel. Feels like a misprice, to be quite honest, on FanDuel. Still Waters, we'll get to that one in a sec. Is Brendan Donovan playing? I'll let you know in a sec when we get to that one. I'm not trying to keep you in suspense. It does look like he's in the lineup, but he's hitting sixth. Let me get through the rest of the Phillies. So Bohm is a very, very different play across sites. I think he's an absolute bargain. You get him at third or first. Not that you're really switching him up instead of Harper, but you can play them both together on FanDuel. Use one at first, one at utility, or you can go the first, third route, which I think I prefer. On DraftKings, it's just a bigger investment, but he's very worthwhile. 304, 359, 482, creating runs 38% better than average. Bryson Stott, even with the lefty opener, even if the lefty opener does get down to Bryson Stott there, it's going to be a non-threatening lefty with a low strikeout rate against a hitter who doesn't strike out that much. Same with Alec Bohm, by the way, doesn't strike out before he even gets there. I think they just swap him out when he has to face Bohm. So Stott at 51 feels pretty cheap on DraftKings. At 31, definitely playable. Shortstop and second base eligibility is nice on FanDuel. 5 home runs, 16 steals, a 106 WRC+, underperforming the triple slash with tons of upside. Nicky Castellanos for just 42.27. Definitely upside beyond what he's done for the triple slash so far. He does have 7 home runs, but underperforming overall power output with just a 127 ISO. Dramatically underperforming run creation at just 77 WRC+. David Dahl, former Colorado Rocky. Haven't seen him in a minute. Let's see. 9 plate appearances last year. Yeah, I didn't think we had much of him last year. In 2022, he didn't play at all in the show, it looks like. I'll pull him up on Fangraphs because I have no idea what he's been up to. But a lefty bat late in the lineup for the dead men in this lineup is not uninteresting. Man, I had Kevin Gausman all teed up to look at here in a minute. Now I've gone away from it like 3 times on Fangraphs. Dahl hasn't been in the show since 2021 with Texas. He made 220 plate appearances. I do remember him there now that I'm thinking about it. 4 home runs, 2 steals, 210, 247, 322 with a 51 WRC plus over 220 plate appearances. Ouch. He's now 30. Oh, he did get, looks like 9 plate appearances in 23. Yeah, oh, right. I do have that. I forgot. So we saw him briefly in 2023. He was with San Diego. He was in AAA with 4 different organizations: Milwaukee, Washington, San Diego, and LA over the last year. Bouncing around a little bit. Once upon a time was supposed to be pretty good. High points of mid-teens home runs, 16 home runs in 271 plate appearances for Colorado back in 2018. 15 home runs, not a big step forward there. 1 home run fewer in 175 more plate appearances the following year. That's about it. He was pretty decent with the bat that year. That was 2019. He hit 15 home runs in 413 plate appearances, slashed 302, 353, 524. We've got some Coors Field effect in there. So just an interesting enough bat, considering just that he's in the lineup and he's left-handed against Bryce Wilson when Wilson eventually gets in. That's not completely uninteresting for the dead men on DraftKings. Not available on FanDuel. Edmundo Sosa, 3,800, 2,900. Love the option. 304, 373, 576, a 272 ISO. I don't think anybody saw that coming over 103 plate appearances. 167 WRC plus. The numbers will cool off. The power will definitely come down. But he's been very, very good. Plays 3 positions on FanDuel at a cheap price. Just the shortstop, but that's where you want him on DraftKings. Joan Rojas, 3,300, 2,800. Playable, 13 stolen bases. Doesn't get on enough to be a truly effective wraparound, but when he does get on, he's been providing some interesting games. But just a 61 WRC plus. Wildly inconsistent. So playable, good, playable for the dead men, and then everybody above, particularly from here to here, is very, very interesting. Zach Wheeler is a big yes. Phillies bats are a big yes. The Jared Koenig and Bryce Wilson combo are pretty much a no, especially taking the win opportunity mostly away from Wilson. There are still ways he could get it, but it's a lot more limited now. pretty much off the board on either site from the bargain bin. And then the Brewers, like I said, you can take a few contrarian shots. They are good enough to string together some hits and maybe score some runs against Zach Wheeler, but he's very, very good. It's not the right spot in my mind to do that. So very limited opportunity. Nationals lineup is in. So Tyler McGill has a 31.3% strikeout rate, but it's only over 16 innings and 3 starts. If we go back to last year, he was at 18.5%. That sounds more realistic, but he was at 25.5 the year before in 9 starts and 47 and a third. I think the truth is probably somewhere between here and here. 22, 24, somewhere in that range maybe. This feels a little bit high. 12.1% swinging is a nice step forward from here. It's above even where he was 2 years ago in 11.6. The CSW is not far off the mark. It's, at least from this one, it's up from last year. Is a talented enough pitcher, I think, to beat this Nationals team. He's very, very fairly priced at $7,200 on the DraftKings slate. Stuff Plus obviously likes the arsenal. He's yet to give up a home run in his 3 appearances. Went 7 innings in his last start. If this is a little bit more of a tiebreaker, if you're a little unsure about whether you want to roll Tyler McGill against the Nationals for $7,200, I'll fix Luis Garcia in a minute, by the way. Against the Dodgers, who I think we can all acknowledge are a much, much better team. 7 innings, 9 strikeouts, 1 walk, 3 hits, no runs. Can I sell you a little Tyler McGill for $7,200 now? Against the Guardians in the start before, he gave up 2 earned runs, 3 runs total, but only 4 hits in 5 innings. Struck out 7 Guardians in 5 innings, which is impressive. Started against the Brewers, his first one back. Just went 4 innings in that one. 1 earned run, 2 runs total, 3 hits. Struck out 4, walked 3. But the uptick in innings, the uptick in strikeouts, I like the option at 72 on FanDuel. I wouldn't say don't play him at 96 on I like it on DraftKings at 72 a lot. I wouldn't say don't play him on FanDuel at 96. I just think it's really, really high priced given a lot of the other options above him. But he's in play, and he'll probably be under-owned compared to a lot of these guys at that price. Just got to do a lot of work to pay it off. The Nationals are a fairly low strikeout team. They've got Luis Garcia hitting third. He's down to 273, 312, 415, a 142 ISO after a nice start, but still is creating runs 7% better than average. He's got 5 home runs, 8 stolen bases. A playable part if you're going to Nationals bats. I do think on DraftKings there's an argument to be made that the Nats could be a little bit interesting since they're extremely cheap. They do have some okay bat on ball skills for some of these guys. And they're facing what I would have to assume is going to be a pretty popular Tyler McGill over there at that price. So maybe the Nats are a little bit on the board, a little bit sticky for that kind of a contrarian value, and a little bit of game theory targeting the field a little. That's only really if Tyler McGill gets popular, though. Keep an eye on ownership wherever you get it. If you're doing that, Lane Thomas is a priority at $4,200 off the top. $3,400 on FanDuel. He's expensive, but definitely playable if you're choosing to take this team. It's just not the same play on FanDuel because Tyler McGill's not going to be popular at 96. But Thomas is very good. He hasn't been good this year, but he's got a lot of skills. Good bat control. Good bat control, good ability to drive the ball. 40.5% hard hits, 9.6% barrels last year. The hard hits aren't that far off at 39.3. The barrels are way down so far, and it's 127 this year. But he's got 3 home runs, 15 stolen bases in a small sample. Just a 105 ISO, 70 WRC plus. I like those numbers to improve pretty quickly. Eddie Rosario, 3,600, 2,900. Sub Mendoza, miscast hitting second at this point. Does have 7 home runs, has stolen 8 bases. But getting on at a 233 clip. Hitting 176, only a 358 slug. Does have a 182 ISO mixed in there, but 66 WRC plus. Just a weird spot to have him hitting. I do like Garcia, or at least enough to play him if I'm going to Nats. Keibert Ruiz hitting cleanup now. I'm just going to keep talking about the option because the 13.7% strikeout rate is exceptionally low. 2.7% walks means he's putting the ball in play a ton, and he does have the ability to hit the ball harder than he has so far this year. Not a ton harder, but harder, and he was a decent option for cheap home runs last year. He's got 3 on this season and 146 plate appearances, just a .094 ISO. He's just slashing 203, 240, 297, just creating runs 47% worse than average. He has not been good, but at 2,900 for a switch hitting catcher hitting cleanup who has this skill set, if you're just looking for 3 cheap catcher hits, Keibert Ruiz is on that list. Wasn't exceptional last year, really. 260, 308, 409, but you can see much better quality in the triple slash there. Drove the ball a little bit better and did hit 18 home runs. So I think we've got significant room for improvement in terms of average and in terms of just being involved in creating runs beyond what he's done. And we've got a little bit of power. He's going to continue to be an interesting, sneaky, just catcher one-off opportunity there. Again, not that McGill is necessarily bad or necessarily all that targetable. It's just this is a very low price where you have to play catchers. Functionally different on FanDuel, even though the price is low. Just a completely different type of play. Because you don't need to play a catcher. So why would you go to Keibert Ruiz unless you weren't stacking this team? Here, it's baked into the price. Senzel, 33-27, 5 home runs, a 185 ISO. He's been effective enough. Not great, but playable, especially if you're going to this team. Draws a significant walk rate, 13.6% so far this season. I like seeing him succeed. 125 WRC plus is nice, over 140 plate appearances. Jesse Winker, 110 WRC plus, hitting for a little bit of pop, 6 home runs, 233, 42, 380. As long as he's getting on base, he's stolen 10 bases. He's been kind of interesting for DFS. If you're stacking this team, he's on the list. Ildemaro Vargas, 3,100, 2,400. At least he fills 4 positions very, very cheap on FanDuel. He has stolen 5 bases and gotten on at a decent pace, over 120 plate appearances, creating runs 20% better than average. Just kind of a low-end DFS option overall, but doesn't really strike out that much. Does put the ball in play. So if we're saying that Keibert Ruiz is interesting for those reasons, maybe a cheap Ildemaro Vargas with multi-position eligibility is as well. Joey Gallo for 3,000, 2,600. Overall, terrible results. Most likely going to put a 0 multiple times into your lineup and then get pinch hit for. But 4 home runs, a 160 ISO. I'll cling to even the bad power output so far. The idea that he's got a 16.1% barrel rate, even struggling like this, what the contact has looked like in the past. Whenever they're going to put him in the lineup, he's going to be at least worth talking about because he's going to stay very, very cheap. Still does draw walks, striking out at that's got to be a career high, even over just 140 plate appearances. That's really, really rough. But there's any given slate 2 home run upside, I promise. 8.05 in the home run model, second on the team. Drew Millis, backup catcher, 2,000, 2,200 across sites, 167, 167, 167 over 6 plate appearances, and negative 10 WRC plus. What's Millis' profile look like? He's 26. Had 33 plate appearances in the show last year. Over 116 plate appearances in AAA as a 26-year-old this year. Did have 5 home runs and 5 steals, 308, 353, 505. Again, a really cheap option if you're mixing and matching your way through a national stack. He's the dead min as a catcher where you do need to play catchers. So for the same reason that Keibert Ruiz is interesting, 900 more, I guess you could squeeze a little bit of value out of the Drew Millis spot for the dead men. On the Mets side, Francisco Lindor caught a little bit of the update. His home run number came down from where it was earlier this morning. Still at 8.35 up against Mackenzie Gore. Not completely terrible, but he's been pretty bad overall. 227, 293, 395. 101 WRC plus, keeping him alive for run creation. And as we've discussed a number of times, everything on this side of the board is right where it's supposed to be. So I expect, again, the bounce back is going to start any day now. Maybe it's already started and I just didn't notice. The average has crept up a little bit, I think. What's his recent game log look like? Let's see. I could have just pulled this up on Fangraphs, but I picked up my phone instead to look at the FanDuel game log. He's had a nice little stretch, actually. Last week was pretty good. Hasn't had a bad run since about mid-May. A lot of productive games in this game log that I'm looking at. 2 clunkers to end the weekend against Arizona, but 2 good games end of last week. Decent game early in the Dodgers series last week. Obviously, the season-long numbers are still way off the mark, but again, all of this, I think it seems likely that he's going to be perfectly fine once we're at the end of the season. 4,800 is pretty cheap for Pete Alonso on DraftKings against any pitcher, even a talented guy like Mackenzie Gore. That's really, really cheap. 3,400 on FanDuel is pretty cheap. This is really cheap. 13 home runs at 235 ISO, 126 WRC plus. Some of the front end is a little off the mark, 239, 313, but I don't really care. He's striking out a little bit less. Plenty of premium contact. It's Pete Alonso. There's a ton of home run upside there. 14.08 in the home run model tonight to lead the team. Brendan Nimmo getting on at a 344 clip, creating runs 17% better than average. 7 home runs, 4 steals. A playable part, definitely making some very good premium contact. I still like him better in the leadoff role where he can exploit his high on-base skill, but he's a good 3-hitter as well. JD Martinez, 5 home runs in 132 plate appearances, 205 ISO, doing JD Martinez things, which is absolutely crushing the ball when he makes contact. Still just 4,000 on DraftKings. Seems a little bit behind the curve. Pretty cheap over there. 3,000 on FanDuel. 8.52 in the home run model to sit second on the team. Mark Vientos also on the board for a home run upside. 8.29. Not a bad mark. Didn't mean to say mark. Not a bad rate in the home run model for Mark. Making very solid contact so far over 61 plate appearances, slashing 321, 377, 607 in the tiny, tiny sample. More importantly, 4 home runs, a 286 ISO, and all this premium contact. So I like the option for Vientos. 3,500 at third base is also very, very cheap for some power upside. Harrison Bader, Jose Iglesias, Luis Torrens at the bottom of the lineup. Bader's the most playable part there. 2 home runs, 8 steals, just a 101 WRC plus. Doesn't do a ton, but capable of contributing with the bat from time to time. Would definitely rather have him than Iglesias or Torrens. On the other side, completely skipped over actually talking about Mackenzie Gore. 9,000 on DraftKings, pretty affordable. 9,800 on FanDuel, definitely an interesting option. Slightly below the top end, but projects similarly enough to these guys to be considered as easily a functional part of that group. And I like him to have a successful day against this Mets team. I really do. 2.91 ERA with a 2.96 xFIP, so pitching basically exactly on form results-wise. Has a great mark by Stuff Plus, a 116 is well above average for the full arsenal. 29.1% strikeout rate with a 12.8% swinging. 6.9% walk rate is kind of defying the CSW mark there. He's putting a lot of hitters away with that nice 29.1%. That's a step up from last year. He was at 25.9, year before 23.3. 27 starts last year in 136 and a third. He's pitching deeper in a ball game so far this year. 58 and 2/3 in 11 starts versus 136 and a third in 27. So you're getting some nice depth out of Gore. I like the upside for 6-7 innings. Last time out he went 5 and a third, but he had pitched into the 7th twice in a row before that. Once against Seattle. We all know how gettable they are. And then pitched 6 and a third against the Phillies at Philadelphia. And 6 complete against Boston at Fenway in the starts before that one. Most recent start was against the Braves. He went 5 and a third. Gave up just 1 earned run. No homers. 2 runs. 6 hits. 10 strikeouts. I'll take that game. Against Seattle, he struck out 8. He did give up a homer in that one, but that was the only earned run. 4-hitter. Yeah, over 7 innings. 6 and a third against the Phillies again at Philadelphia. Gave up just 2 earned. Did give up a home run, but just 3 hits. Only struck out 3 and walked 3 in that one. That was a little bit of an outlier strikeout-wise. But he had a couple other games. There were 3 games in this season where he struck out just 4. So it's not that far off the mark. It's not that crazy. But other than that, we're having a pretty high-end year for strikeouts for him. So I think you get against a Mets team that is a little bit below league average in terms of where their strikeout rate lands, but that's with some small sample over performances, right? Mark Vientos probably not improved to a 21.3%. We're probably going to trend back, maybe not all the way above 30, but into the high 20s with him. 25% is an uptick for Brendan Nimmo, but you balance it with Pete Alonso there. There's a couple of gettable hitters here for Mackenzie Gore. Definitely some upside. I like him as a fair discount as a fair discount from the top end options without giving up that much of median projection or ceiling, to be quite honest. Could easily go out and post the highest pitching score on the day. So, four corners game? Kinda. Four corners game with a preference for the pitching outside of that spot, which I don't really love, just given where the price is. I'll go Mackenzie Gore above Tyler McGill because that's how they project out, and I think that's how it makes sense. He's the better of the two pitchers. But Tyler McGill is not bad. 7,200 is very, very cheap. So maybe I have to break that up too, actually, because it probably should be Tyler McGill for 72 on DraftKings, Mackenzie Gore on DraftKings, then FanDuel, and then Tyler McGill on FanDuel, like kind of with a pretty big gap between the other three pitching spots. Hopefully that makes some sense. And then I probably would say the Nationals bats, and particularly where Tyler McGill would get popular on DraftKings, that's where the Nationals bats become more interesting. Probably Nationals bats slightly above Mets bats, but both of the hitting options are well below the pitching options. I'll actually rescind the four corners thing, and I'll say that they're more just kind of contrarian bats where I favor the pitching significantly. But a lot of playability in that game. Hopefully that wasn't too completely ambiguous. This is the one with the really interesting pitching matchup. Mamba saying all these pitchers are overpriced today. Don't think anybody should pay up for pitching today. I don't think I agree. I certainly don't agree with the adjective overpriced. Zach Wheeler and Tariq Skubal are appropriately priced. Grayson Rodriguez is easily appropriately priced and arguably cheap on DraftKings. Kevin Gausman is definitely too cheap on both sites, even given the matchup. Mackenzie Gore is about right. Like, you could argue that Mackenzie Gore on FanDuel is a little high. Tyler McGill is certainly too high on FanDuel, but he's cheap on DraftKings. I think, to your point, Mamba, there are a lot of very good mid-range and bargain bin options today. But I don't think that means that these guys are overpriced. It's just the discussion is more, do you want to pay like 88 for Verlander and 74 for Waldron as a pairing rather than 10-7 for Zach Wheeler and take a risk on a $8,000 Kevin Gausman even, or take a like a Wheeler Verlander pairing. I think the point should be made more along those lines. Like, there's a lot of really good pairings, say from here down, so you don't necessarily need to go there, but that doesn't make these three guys overpriced. Those three guys could easily pay off those salaries, and those are the three best pitchers on the slate. So little yes, little bit of no in there, Mamba. Lone Wolf with the other side of the Joey Gallo argument. He certainly does suck. I will give you that. No arguments there. But you guys know I love Joey Gallo. I'm just moving that up to try and improve the zoom, not hiding anything down here. This is just a little board that I have down here that I can put like... I got our shot. And you get some stats, although this is apparently referring to... Oh, that's the hitter one. Down there. Just to get some quick stats. I never actually use it on the show, but that's what's down there. Anyway, hopefully that improves your viewing experience. When's the last time Joey Gallo hit a home run? I don't know. It's been a minute. He was also hurt. Joey Gallo's last home run was May 26th. So, like, beginning of last week. A week ago yesterday. Is that recent enough for you? Since then, he's gone 1 for 8. He actually he had a base hit of some kind. He had a single. He actually singled yesterday. Look at that. Singled, scored a run. 1 for 4. Struck out once, walked once. That was an effective little game from Joey Gallo. against Cleveland yesterday. So even while going 1 for 4, every now and then again he can contribute. He honestly hasn't been awful through the, let's call it, since like May 25th. He's had a nice little string of hits. That was a really weird way to do this. Over the last... Over the last 14 days, he's 7 for 34 with a 594 OPS, 5 runs scored, a home run, and 2 RBIs. It's about what we're getting these days. Last week, that was 2 runs scored, 4 for 14 with a 732 OPS. Over the last 7 days, no home runs in that stretch. Look, he's not consistent by any means. What you're buying with Joey Gallo, as we've talked about a number of different times on this show, is whenever he's in the lineup, and that's why he hits down here. Right? What you're buying is maybe the opportunity at some on base and correlated scoring. He's better than a 279 on base, given his walk rate. He's really got to do something about the strikeouts and get him back down to just wrangle it back down to 35%, and he's effective again. He's just been extremely bad because those strikeouts are pushed up even further than they're supposed to be or than they ever were. But still does barrel the ball at a very nice rate. Still does have the ability to have a 50+% hard hit rate. He's just down at 41.1 right now, over 140 plate appearances. But I like that to go back up to the 50s if he gets the opportunity to continue putting bat on ball. I don't know that he gets above the Mendoza line, but I like him to get above a 300 on base if he continues to get plate appearances. So he's not a complete dead spot at the bottom of the lineup for the full season. He's definitely, to your point, a complete dead spot in a lot of cases. He, as I said when I was talking about him, he's very likely to give you 3 zeros and then get pinch hit for. That's Joey Gallo. But on the days that you have him and nobody else does and he hits 2 home runs, that's what we're here for. Connor Norby at the bottom of the Orioles lineup. Deadman price on the DraftKings slate. Norby. You can change your name to Norby. Norby, Joker, got excited when he heard that somebody was bad-mouthing Joey Gallo. He came running over. Norby, the actual ball player, in 238 AAA plate appearances so far this year, had 9 home runs and 7 stolen bases, 286, 374, 510 triple slash, creating runs 27% better than average. High strikeout player, 30.7% high strikeout rate in AAA this season, but an 11.3% walk rate keeps him really effective. Over 633 last year as a 23-year-old in AAA. He had 21 homers and 10 steals. Very high-end kid. I think our pal Adam Scherer's tweet nailed it. For the Orioles, this is just another ho-hum kind of a... I'm not actually reading, I'm paraphrasing. For the Orioles, this is just kind of like a ho-hum kind of a... another top prospect coming on up, whatever, plug him into the bottom of the lineup. A lot of other teams would be like, banging the drum about calling this kid up and how killer of a prospect he is. So yet another interesting infield bat at the bottom of the lineup for the O's. That said, you don't necessarily have to stretch all the way down there to find quality. It's just they're going up against Kevin Gausman. He, despite a dip in strikeout rate, despite a dip in swinging strike, despite a dip in stuff plus across his entire arsenal, truly not pitching all that poorly. It's just not quite the numbers that we're expecting from Kevin Gausman in the long term. 4.14 ERA is perfectly fine. 3.23 xFIP is the truth of the matter. That's a very good low xFIP. A 24% strikeout rate is above average. It's just not the 30+% that we've gotten from him, or the high 20s, and then the 31.1% that we got from him over the last couple years. You can see the big dip in swinging strikes so far this year. The CSW is down. The walks are up slightly, but still 6% walks is not bad. 1.36 whip does not match that 6% walk rate, so there's some misfortune in there in terms of BABIP. The important thing, and remember I said I had him pulled up earlier, got away from it. So the BABIP so far this season against is 350. I don't think hitters are going to continue to go 350 against him, although 2 years ago he did give up a 363 BABIP. Finished the year at 3.35 ERA and a 2.75 xFIP. higher strikeout rate, 28-something strikeout rate. So even if he does continue to give up batting average on balls in play, but he has notably gotten a little bit unlucky there. The interesting thing is about, when you take a look at his stuff, he is, where are we here? He's lost a mile an hour or so of velocity on his four-seamer. He's throwing it a little bit less. He's throwing his splitter a little bit less frequently. He's working in every now and again a somewhat effective true sinker. If we're just looking at the Savant page. But he's lost a fairly significant amount of whiff rate on the most notably splitter, which last year was kind of his out pitch at 43.2% whiff, 23.8% put away. It's a 31.7% whiff rate on that pitch so far this season. Dramatically less effective. He's throwing it a little bit slower, 86.3 miles an hour last year, down to 85.4. That goes kind of hand in hand with the loss of velo on the four-seamer. You don't want that gap to close that much. Still throwing it with similar amount of spin, similar extension. Everything else looks okay. He's just giving up a lot of slug on the four-seamer, so the four-seamer's not been quite as effective. He's actually gotten a better whiff rate on it, but he's not putting hitters away with his four-seamer as frequently as he did last year. And he's given up a lot of premium contact on the four-seamer. So it's made the splitter a little bit less effective because they're just not swinging at it waiting on that four-seamer. Or not swinging at it quite as frequently. And then across Stuff Plus, this is a pitcher last year who was at a 110 for his four-seamer, and it's down to a 98. We know league average is 100, right? Hasn't really changed on the slider, but the splitter is also down. So he's gone from a 105 Stuff Plus mark last year across the full arsenal all the way down to 95 for the full arsenal. Every other year of his career, since they've been measuring Stuff Plus, he's been above average for the full arsenal. Still above average for location, same location plus rating, similar pitching plus rating. So it's kind of like a Francisco Lindor, where I think we're maybe not that far off if you can find a little bit of an uptick in velo, figure out what's going on between the fastball and the splitter. I think we've got upside here. And again, not pitching all that poorly that he should be priced down all the way to 8,000, 8,200, even against a very good Orioles team. So I'm kind of interested in Gausman. I think he's easy to get to on DraftKings and very worthwhile. 8,200 on FanDuel makes him probably the top value pitcher on the board. Like I said, I wanted to use him from here, even against the Orioles, but probably I'm going to settle for Matt Waldron for 79 against the Angels at a cheaper price. A lot of bats to pay for today. Top of the board on the Orioles side, Gunnar Henderson drawing a pretty significant home run mark at 9.41, just slightly below the magic number. 19 homers on the season for him, 8 stolen bases, a 323 ISO, just absolutely mashing. 170 WRC plus. Adley Rutschman right behind him, 8.7% barrels, 42.9% hard hits. Ryan Mountcastle, 10.1 and 47.5. A lot of power threat up at the top of this lineup. 10 home runs for Adley, slashing 304, 342, 473. 8 home runs for Ryan Mountcastle, 291, 330, 498. Creating runs 36% better than average. Has the ISO pushed up above 200. Hitting for more power this year, hitting for more consistency this year. Really like what Ryan Mountcastle's done, and he's still cheap, $4,900, $3,100. That's a $5,000 plus hitter on DraftKings. You're getting a bit of a discount. Same thing on FanDuel, really. He should be $34, $35 at least, just given what he's done this season, and there's upside beyond that. $43.29 continues to be cheap for Ryan O'Hearn. 9.8% barrels and 40.9% hard hits out of him. It's down. The ridiculous run that started last year has kind of cooled a little bit, but he's still creating runs. Still hits for decent power from the left side. Holding down this spot in the lineup. 7 home runs, a 181 ISO, 23% better than average for run creation. And he's this cheap. Positionally blocked with Mountcastle. I'd rather have Mountcastle on DraftKings. But if I have to take the discount one spot later in the lineup for O'Hearn, I think you can easily do it. They're both in play on FanDuel. Santander, tons of power, 10 home runs on the season, 217 ISO, 111 WRC plus. Back to doing Santander kind of things. Just need the power output. I expect the hard hits and the barrels will continue to climb. 46, 3,000. You're getting a nice discount on his home run upside. Jordan Westberg, 5,000, 3,400, slashing 293, 350, 515 with a 222 ISO. 9 home runs, a 148 WRC plus. This team doesn't stop with the quality up and down the lineup. They're playable 1 through 9 today, at least where you have 9 options, 1 through 8 on FanDuel. Colton Cowser, 4,300, 2,800. Has not been as elite as that hot start that he had, but he's been effective enough. 7 home runs, a 199 ISO, creating runs 18% better than average. Some of that comes from the hot start. That's over 186 plate appearances. 236, 328, 435, triple slash. We expect more, but the premium contact is holding up. And when he hits the ball, he can mash. 43, 28 for the upside is great. 2,200 on both sites for Austin Hayes. Honestly, cheap for the talent. He has not been good over 86 plate appearances this year, but he is better than this. Last year, 16 home runs, slash 275, 325, 444, created runs 12% better than average over 566. Similar numbers the year before. Austin Hayes has been around for a while. We know he's a little bit better than a $2,200 player on either one of these sites. His contact so far this season in the small samples, not far off the mark. Definitely, if you need a cheap bat down there and you can't play him in the infield, Hayes is not a bad option. It's just not a good matchup against Kevin Gausman. Again, they're checked down on the Vegas board into just 3.84. Going the other way, Grayson Rodriguez, 27.9% strikeout. Still walking too many at 9.6%. Does have a 1.33 whip. That's high, but has the ability, given the strike throwing profile, both swinging and called strikes, to just punch his way out of trouble when he gets into it. You can see Stuff Plus loves the arsenal, 3.53 ERA with a 3.87 xFIP. Hasn't been bad for power yet. It does give up some hard hits, some exit velo. Is a fly ball trajectory pitcher here. So we could see some more home run damage in the future. Could come today, is feeding a little bit of mid-level power upside for the Blue Jays. But I really like Grayson Rodriguez. I think he's a very, very good young pitcher. Last year, 25% strikeout rate over 122. You can see the home runs were up slightly beyond where they are on similar kind of contact last year. Although 10.4 degree average launch is significantly lower than the 17.1. So maybe he ends up taking it this way. Maybe he ends up taking it down on the launch angle and actually continues to improve that. It gives a little bit more justification to this. But yeah, was a similarly very high-end pitcher over those starts last year and has performed well so far this year. I think he's high-priced, but I'm perfectly willing to pay it. Like I was saying to Mamba just a minute ago, it is kind of just a conversation between, do you want to work between the mid-range and the low end, or do you want to work at the top of the board for a fair price? And at 9,400, honestly, on DraftKings, again, he is a little bit cheap compared to the upside compared to the other guys. Last start against Boston, went 6 innings, gave up 4 earned runs. That was problematic. Gave up a home run, but struck out 10, so at least clawed some of it back. Missed booking the quality start on FanDuel in that one. 5 innings, 7 strikeouts against the White Sox. Honestly, that's a little bit underwhelming. He walked 5. Some walks got away from him in that one. 6 innings against Seattle, struck out 7, gave up just 1 hit, no earned runs. 5 2/3 against the Yanks. Just 3 strikeouts, but no runs. 3 walks, 5 hits. Problematic start against the Angels. That was the only one where he really blew up. He gave up 7 runs in 4 1/3. Struck out 7, walked 1, gave up a homer, gave up 11 hits. That's a weird one. Was very good over 4 starts to start this season. I like the option, especially here. If you take Blue Jays bats against, I think you're mostly working from the top of the lineup. Top 7 is actually playable. Davis Schneider's been very, very good. 4,400, 3,600. 7 home runs, 3 stolen bases, a 134 WRC plus, a 220 ISO, 14.3% barrels. Good power option. Kind of miscast at the top of the lineup if we're really being honest about it. Probably more of a 5-hitter, but is getting on base at a 349 clip. Does draw some walks. So he's not completely weird there. And given what everybody else on this team is doing, there's a good argument to be made that it's fine. Danny Jansen, hard-hitting catcher option, 10.2 on 10.2% barrel rate for 4,700 on DraftKings, 3,100 on FanDuel, perfectly playable, 5 home runs at 238 ISO, 159 WRC plus over 120. Vladdy, as we've looked at, is not far off the mark at all. The power's a little bit down, definitely in the ISO, 112, and just 5 home runs over 258. Everything else has been pretty terrific. No issues playing Vlad. You're getting a very, very good discount for him at 4,700 on DraftKings. FanDuel holding firm at 35, but no issues with it. Danny Vogelbach positionally blocked from Vladdy on FanDuel, or on DraftKings, 2,900 over there. On FanDuel, he's 23. You can obviously play both. He hasn't been great. He's just paid to hit home runs against righties. Maybe you get a little power upside, 6.23 in the home run model. Just kind of slots him into the middle, but he's cheap. Bo Bichette, George Springer, Dalton Varsho. That's 3 interesting hitters to have 5, 6, 7. Especially given these prices, 4,300, 3,845 on DraftKings, 3,429, 33 on FanDuel. Cheaper on DraftKings than they are on FanDuel, but cheap on both sites. Underperforming for sure this season. Bo Bichette, 236, 284, 343, only 4 home runs, 4 steals. 4 home runs, 7 steals for George Springer. We're off the mark there. 80 and a 79 WRC plus for those two. At least Varsho's hitting for power. 10 home runs, a 240 ISO, 116 WRC plus. Despite just a 301 on base, 213 average. So you get the power upside there. These two do have power upside. They're better players than Dalton Varsho is. Any one of these guys on the right day, you can see they're all just in the 6 range, but that's not totally underwhelming for home run upside. These guys are at worst good mix and match options, and this entire lineup is honestly pretty cheap. I just don't really like targeting Grayson Rodriguez. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Kevin Kiermaier, just kind of afterthoughts at the bottom of the lineup. Kiner-Falefa has been doing well this season, 105 WRC plus. Hits for average, does drop base hits in. Not a great option for DFS upside, 33.27. Does play 4 positions on FanDuel and 2 on DraftKings. That's the upside for my KF. Definitely a 4-corner spot here. It's another one where I prefer the pitching. But this one I think is more realistic in terms of there are very good bats on both sides to work with. But it's Grayson Rodriguez, even with the high pricing. DraftKings, you're getting a little bit of a discount for the talent. Kevin Gausman, firmly and very close to Rodriguez there, considering they project fairly close to one another, and he's significantly discounted for his talent and ceiling. Then Orioles bats, then Blue Jays bats. Oops. Got to pick up the pace a little bit here. Taking some time to talk our way through some of these just really interesting pitching spots, honestly. Nathan Eovaldi, I don't think we need to really focus on. Just went 3 innings through a high 30s pitch count the other day. FanDuel, it's just off the board at 9,000. Even if you get 5, which I don't think you're getting. I think we're more likely looking at 50 pitches, 4 innings. Even if you got 5 on FanDuel, what are you doing with it at 9,000? It's even if he has a nice strikeout day. Just don't think we're getting there. 7,600 on DraftKings just doesn't really look like he's that strong an option. If I knew I was getting 5, I would say you could throw some darts at it for 76 because he does have strikeout upside. I just don't know we're getting 5. He's reliable to work that many innings when he's pitching regularly. It's just he missed, 3 weeks between May 2nd and May 28th. Made no rehab starts. We talked about it before that start against Arizona. No rehab starts, so this is his rehab. So we're probably only taking it up to 50, at most 60 pitches. The Tigers, frisky enough to be trouble, too. Eovaldi not really overly vulnerable to home runs, does a good job of keeping the ball in the yard, 7.2 degree average launch, 5.3% barrels, just 1.65% home runs in the small sample this year over 44 1/3. Last year, a 2.60% home run rate on similar numbers. Year before was 4.57. I knew there was a bad one back there somewhere, but wasn't quite the pitcher that he is currently, I think. But again, DFS-wise, I don't think we're getting enough innings here. Probably does keep the Tigers in check for the innings that he does pitch, though. You can see nobody significantly above even halfway to the magic number. 5.13 for Jake Rogers at the bottom. I'll see if we have the confirmed, and then Riley Green, 5.11. It doesn't look like we have the confirmed. We do have the Texas lineup. Yep, not in yet. So, I do think you can play the Tigers. They're probably on that board of interesting enough, fairly low-owned options. It's just, Eovaldi, if he's on form for the 4 innings that you're going to get him, not overly targetable. Very good strikeout pitcher. Pretty good at keeping the ball in the yard. And you're getting an underwhelming Tigers team. They just sent Spencer Torkelson back to the minor leagues. That's how bad he was. Veerling's been good off the top of the board, 132 WRC+. Riley Green is probably their best player. He's got 10 home runs, a 202 ISO, and a 128 WRC+. Wensiel Perez has been good over 154, 122 WRC+, with a 181 ISO. That said, he hasn't been crushing the ball, just 6.5% barrels, 33.3% hard hits, just 3 home runs, 4 steals. It's been okay. Mark Canha at 44-28 has 6 home runs, 2 steals. A solid veteran bat who gets on base a ton, a good correlated scoring option. Just a player who is good when he's in a better lineup than this. If you're stacking Tigers, he's not somebody that you need to skip if he's in the lineup. You can definitely play him. But I think he's more interesting hitting ahead of good hitters when he can use his on-base skills and then hit for power here and there, rather than like, all right, Mark, you're our cleanup hitter. Colt Keith, for his talent, is very cheap. He's catching on maybe a little bit over the last 2 weeks. Had a decent week the week before last, was more back to earth a little bit last week, but 2,800, 2,500 for who he's supposed to be is kind of intriguing if you're stacking this team. Lefty bat against Eovaldi, and then whatever comes out of the pen. He's got 2 home runs, 3 steals, a .070 ISO, just a 67 WRC+. He hasn't been good, but he's not striking out. 18.2% strikeouts, 7% walks. Interesting bat on ball profile. Interesting player for the cheap price. Gio Urshela, not much of a hitter. He's been okay for them, 275, 304, 376, but a 94 WRC+, no real power to speak of. Akil Baddoo, 3,125, especially if he hits higher in the lineup than this, definitely an interesting option. Lefty bat with power, 11.1% barrels, 55.6% hard hits in his tiny sample of 16 plate appearances. Hit us a home run the other day when we brought him up, so let's bring him up again. Why not? We know there's talent there. We know there's upside for home runs, a little bit of stolen base upside on the right slate. Don't mind Akil Baddoo from the bottom of the lineup. I do mind Javi Baez, 3,000, 2,300. Just awful. 183 plate appearances, a 191, 219, 260, a .069 ISO, 66% worse than average creating runs. Atrocious. Jake Rogers has a little bit of infrequent catcher power, 2 home runs and 120 plate appearances. Capable of driving the ball for sure, 9.7% barrel so far this year, last year 12%. Mamba's looking to take the slate down with the Washington bats. I love it. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Hit the little subscribe bell. Follow our pals over at acemind.io for all your sim and optimization needs. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps over there, gives you 20% off your first month. Your first 3 days with them are always free. Hopefully we'll have some other sponsors one of these days to talk about, but those guys absolutely rock. Some info down there at the bottom for you, also down in the description. That plug that I just gave, plus any kickback info, anything's appreciated. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle also, importantly. Help spread the word over there. If you pop a win, give us a little shout out with a screenshot, and we'll retweet it and get a little bit of love that way. If you see something come up, I send out the projections and everything daily. If you happen to be on there, you see it come up, hit the retweet, hit the like button on that. It all helps. Tariq Skubal, 10-5, 10-4. Again, it is a high price to pay, but he is very, very good, even against this Rangers lineup. 2.01 ERA with a 2.51 xFIP, a 31.3% strikeout rate. He's thrown 67 innings and 11 starts. He works deep into games. 14.7% strikeout rate is tremendous. A 33% CSW is fantastic. He has been inarguably one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball since the beginning, or since he came back last season. What did he throw? 15 starts last season. Had a 2.80 ERA, a 2.57 xFIP, a 4.5 walk rate, a 32.9% strikeout rate. He's just been tremendous. That is an incredible 26 starts. So he is that good. He has the opportunity to put up a dominant start even against a good Rangers team, a fairly low strikeout Rangers team. He is talented enough to go find his strikeouts against this bunch. No issues with it outside of the price, 10.5, 10.4. Number 2 on the board to Zach Wheeler, a little bit cheaper than Wheeler. If you can find a way to pay for these guys, either one of them is easily playable from the top of the board, even with these matchups. And there are a lot of options where you need to play 2 starters. A lot of these guys help pay for these guys. That's where I kind of differ, I think, from what Mamba said. I do think there is a lot of quality through here, and I do think you can find paths to success rostering one of these 3 and one of these guys or one of the bargain bin guys. Even rostering like these 2 guys together isn't completely nuts. But I do think, by and large, the approach should probably be somebody from this range and somebody from that range. It's going to be a popular build, no question. It's a fairly straightforward call. I'm not breaking any ground there. These guys are tremendous at the top of the board. And then Kevin Gausman is just really cheap. But Scooble appropriately, 1-1A with Wheeler. It's not even a 1-2. They're right neck and neck. 29.3% hard hits, just 86.6 miles an hour of exit velo. Very difficult to square up. If you do draw Rangers bats, there is a lot of talent in that lineup. You've got a surging Corey Seager, 13 home runs, 211 ISO, 131 WRC plus, up to 268, 358, 478. Prices coming back up, 5,500 over there, 4,200 over here. Semion's still really cheap at 52.37. He's got 9 home runs, a 172 ISO. Underperforming a little bit, but we're not very far off the mark. The contact looks about where it's supposed to be. So do the strikeouts. The walks are down a little. That probably accounts for a little bit of a dip in runs. And then we've just missed some results-oriented output. 9 homers is probably on pace over 266. If anything, it's not far off the pace, but a 172 ISO is a little bit down. Robbie Grossman hitting third today. He's very, very cheap, 2,825. Decent bat on ball skills, a little bit of speed. Can definitely get involved if this team goes off. Not a priority in the heart of the lineup, though. Helps pay for everybody around him, though. Adolis Garcia, 54.37, 13 home runs, 4 steals, a 231 ISO, 105 WRC plus. Tremendous option in the heart of the lineup. Tons and tons of premium contact. 15% barrels, 47.7% hard hits. Jonah Heim, very cheap for his power for just $4,000 on DraftKings. 5 home runs and 201 plate appearances. The ISO's down this year. The premium contact is barrels are down a little bit. Hard hits are actually slightly up. Does have significant upside at the catcher position, hitting 5th. Wyatt Langford for 36. A lot of rookie talent there. Just 222, 284, 281 over the first 148 plate appearances. I like the upside over. Give him another 150. I like him to outperform what he did in the first 150. Josh Smith is dropping in the lineup as the numbers are cooling a little bit. 287, 377, 425. Things still look very good. 3 home runs, 3 steals, 132 WRC plus. Just a 138 ISO over 207 plate appearances. Not expensive, but not an ideal option in my mind at third base. 3,000 at shortstop. I could make the argument for the fit a little bit better on FanDuel. That said, you have a cheaper Ezekiel Duran with 4 position eligibility on FanDuel. Just another outfielder for 27 on DraftKings. I like Duran's talent a little bit better than I like Josh Smith's. In 120 plate appearances, we're already a third of the way to the home run output that Smith has in almost twice as many plate appearances. 270, 325, 324. Just an 88 WRC plus. Not really tremendously effective, but at least as good as Leo Taveras at the bottom of the lineup. 4 home runs, 5 steals. 3 playable options from the bottom. They do play 1 through 9 on any given slate. No Nathaniel Lowe in the lineup today, but it is a good top-to-bottom team. It's just Tariq Skubal on the other side. Very, very difficult matchup against Tariq Skubal. So, tough spot to say that you really want to get invested in Rangers outside of anything but like a contrarian play, and I do like making contrarian plays with good teams. It's just good pitching tends to beat good hitting, and Tariq Skubal is among the very, very best of those good pitchers. So it's not a great spot for the Rangers. It's reflected again in the Vegas line for this game. Both teams sub 4. Oh, so Tariq Skubal, big yes, even at price. Figure out a way to pay for him. If you're playing anything else from this game, it would probably go Rangers bats, Tigers bats, and then Eovaldi is a no unless somebody guaranteed you for 76 on DraftKings you got 5 innings. But I don't think the Tigers are all that great an option, and the Rangers, again, just as a contrarian with a good team kind of a play. Definitely need to hit the gas pedal. 450. We got time. Cards and Astros. We got both of these lineups. That's fantastic. We got these updated real quick. And we will take a look. So definitely think that Justin Verlander is interesting here. We're doing with an $8,800 option on Verlander on DraftKings, $9,200 on FanDuel. I know that he's down in terms of strikeouts. I know that he's not the Justin Verlander he once was, but he's still been pitching very effectively, and this is a bad Cardinals team overall. So there's a lot of upside for Verlander here on the right day. Going the other way, Kyle Gibson is very, very cheap, is capable of having a decent enough game where he keeps the Astros off the board, goes 6 innings. So for the DraftKings price, he's not off the board as an SP2 bargain bin guy. It's not my first choice. But you do get reasonably good shots at depth. I don't think you've got a great shot at the win bonus with his lineup against Verlander. But 6 good innings with a handful of strikeouts is easily on the board for Gibson. At 85 on FanDuel, honestly, given the upside for a quality start, he actually probably is sneakily on the board over there. It's just I don't think there's many days where he goes and wins you the slate. And I can have Kevin Gausman for 82 with significantly higher strikeout upside. Similar risk, right? There's not that much risk difference between Baltimore and Houston. So I'd just rather take Gausman for 300 less than Gibson with lower strikeout upside against the better low strikeout team. I think that's what cuts into it. So what you're most likely dealing with is like this median projection, and then maybe you get the quality start bonus on top of it if he manages to keep him off the board. But I don't think you're getting a ton of ceiling for the FanDuel price. There is ceiling a little bit for the DraftKings price. Verlander has this and more against this Cards team. They're striking out at a 22.8% clip. He's at 22.9 over 47 innings, 8 starts. Does have a tidy little 10.6% swinging. Not throwing as many called strikes as we would want. The stuff is right there, though. Stuff Plus loves the arsenal and what it looks like in the small sample. He's given up a little bit in terms of premium contact and home run output. Handful of barrels mixed in here, but that's a very, very low overall hard hit rate. So I think we're looking at some happenstance in a small sample rather than a problem. I think there's upside beyond. It says the other way around in his ERA versus XFIP numbers, 3.26 ERA with a 4.57 XFIP. That kind of defies what I'm saying. But I think this is a case where we can look at it as Verlander is maybe underperforming form. Over his last 2 starts, it's also noteworthy he faced Oakland and Seattle, similarly pretty low-end teams. Probably more strikeout in both of those lineups. 9 strikeouts in each game. Went 7 at Seattle in his most recent one. Give up a homer. Just 1 earned run, 3 hits, 9 Ks. Walked 1. 9 Ks in 6 innings at Oakland. Give up a home run, 1 earned, 8 hits is problematic. But just the 1 earned run, 2 runs total. 9 strikeouts, no walks. So especially given that in those 2 starts he found his strikeout form, had a game, the one immediately before those 2, he went just 4 2/3, gave up 4 earned runs, struck out just 3, walked 2 against Milwaukee. That was a rough one. But against, a similarly low-end Detroit team at Detroit, the one before that, went 7 shutout innings, 2 hits, struck out 8. So in these right spots, we've gotten strikeout upside from him. He had a 2 strikeout game against the Yankees, who can be stingy. He also gave up 7 earned in that one. He had a 2 strikeout game against the Guardians, who were also stingy. But he struck out 7 Cubs in just 4 1/3 all the way back on April 25th. I think there's some sneaky upside here for Mr. Verlander for strikeouts. Wow. Not that it really matters. Very low-end player, but another gambling scandal. Per the Wall Street Journal, Padres infielder Tucupita Marcano is facing a potential lifetime ban for betting on baseball. Not a smart decision, but it's not like he was a high-paid superstar or anything. If you're going to Cardinals bets against Justin Verlander, you're I think playing with fire there. We've lost with the Cardinals in so many key spots. That said, Paul Goldschmidt has caught on a little bit of late. Nolan Arenado has not been bad for power. Nolan Gorman has not been bad for power. Nolan Arenado has been pretty bad for everything. Mason Wynn is okay and kind of interesting in the leadoff spot. Alec Burleson is not terrible. But up and down, it's really not a great lineup. And Verlander, again, I'm banking on the upside on Verlander. I made the mistake when he looked like he was kind of washed, like way back that one rough year that he had going back, 8-10 years at this point. I was like, he's probably done. I think he's won a couple World Series and Cy Young since. Or at least has been tremendous. So I'm not betting against Justin Verlander here, but if you do, Mason Wynn for 33.29, very effective. 349 on base over 188 plate appearances is interesting. Good back control guy, puts the ball in play, 299, 349, 425. Currently runs 21% better than average. Minor amount of pop, doesn't really drive the ball, doesn't really have a batted ball profile for power, but doesn't strike out, draws an okay walk rate, puts the ball in play a decent amount, and has some speed, 7 stolen bases. Burleson, better for hard hits and barrels, a little bit more power upside. Similar with a low strikeout rate, low walk profile. So again, a lot of balls in play. 108 WRC plus. He's got 6 homers and 2 steals from the left side. Goldie's up to 7 home runs. He's gotten a few of those recently. 134 ISO, 92 WRC plus. Long way to go to climb his way out of that hole. You can see it in the premium contact still, but at least there are signs of life finally. 4,000, still very, very cheap. Gorman does have 11 home runs, 234 ISO, 120 WRC plus, coming on a little bit for the season. 16.3% barrels. He's still way down for hard hits overall, still striking out too much, but at least he's kind of stabilized. Arenado's got 5 home runs, just a 117 ISO and 99 WRC plus, like literally the worst swing profile by those new swing measurement metrics that StatCast has in the entire league. He's got like the worst swing length and the slowest swing speed. Pretty bad combo. 3,900, 2,800. Still playable, given who he once was, given that he doesn't strike out and does put the ball in play. But the barrels are gone. The hard hits are way down. The power's just been way out. It's been problematic. Brendan Donovan, for whoever asked hours ago at this point. 3,600, 2,900. You're getting him hitting 6th, not leadoff, but an interesting enough option if you stack this team. Has a little bit of pop, has the ability to get on base, creating runs 7% better than average. That said, has not been great. Just another guy, a lot of balls in play, 13.7% strikeouts, 7.7% walks. Does have the ability to drive the ball a little bit. Ivan Herrera, the full-time catcher right now, 98 WRC plus, 3 home runs, 1 stolen base, over 146 plate appearances. He's playable. 9.9% barrels and 42.6% hard hits is kind of interesting for a cheap catcher. But again, it's just against Justin Verlander, you're getting a little bit thin as you go to the bottom of the Cards lineup now. Matt Carpenter, 31-24, has a home run and not much else so far this year. Don't really like the option. Michael Ciani, cue the Matt Carpenter home run. Michael Ciani, 24-23, 1 home run, 6 stolen bases. Just getting on at a 265 clip, kind of an afterthought at the bottom. If you go into the Astros, I think they're a lot more playable between these two teams. Jose Altuve down to just 7.37 in the home run model, but not having a bad year by any means. 158 ISO. The power's dipped a little bit. He's still around his usual, like he never was one to rack up a ton of barrels, a ton of hard hits, but he did hit his home runs over time and still has 9 on the season, 8 stolen bases, creating runs 28% better than average, getting on at a good clip ahead of Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez, who are 2 of the best left-handed power bats in the entire game. Tucker up to 6,300, 4,100, 19 home runs and 9 steals, a 319 ISO, been one of the best players in baseball all season. Contact profile is tremendous. The price is high, but he's well worth it, even against Kyle Gibson, who does have the ability to keep the ball in the yard. Over time, not terrible home run rates. Good low launch angles. Okay at keeping the ball, or at least this year, and not even so far this year. At least this year he was better for keeping hard hits and exit velo down. But the launch angles have always been sub 10 or around 10. So not bad in terms of fly balls. You can see it cutting a little bit into the Astros' home run profile. But either one of these guys are tremendous home run options. Jordan Alvarez at 5,100 is very cheap on DraftKings. That's a cheaper price than 36 on FanDuel. He should really never dip below, let's say, 55, and it should always be higher than that, honestly. 282, 355, 476. The ISO's down a little, 11 home runs. At some point, he's going to go on a tear where he hits 6 home runs in a week, and this looks a lot different. Alex Bregman, 41, 3,000, 8 home runs, 166 ISO. At least the power's bounced back a little bit. 244 plate appearances. He's been coming around to maybe okay. The triple slash is still really low. 229, 287 on the front end there. But at least we're getting a little power output now. So maybe there's still signs of life. Jake Myers at 32-27 is kind of interesting. 6 home runs, 4 stolen bases, a 134 WRC plus, a 112 WRC plus out of Jeremy Pena with a pretty effective triple slash, 5 home runs and 8 steals for him as a cheap shortstop. Definitely playable. I don't love the option for John Singleton, 2,500, 3,400, but on a team with no other first base option, it's not like he's blocking anybody. He does have a little bit of lefty power, 7.2% barrels, 41.2% hard hits with 5 home runs and 158. That said, it amounts to a 132 ISO and 1 point below average for run creation. He's just cheap at first base. Jainer Diaz has really cooled off after that great start. Not even going to try all that hard to sell him. He's still cheap. He is still playable. I do still like that bat. I still like the 50% hard hit rate, but it's been a little bit rough. You can definitely get there. The strikeouts are low. The walks are low. A lot of well-struck balls in play from an affordable catcher, but now he's down to hitting 8th. It's not as good as it once was. Chas McCormick, 38-25, really underperforming his talent over 102. It's another player. I'm going to bet on the upside for the next 102. I think Chas McCormick at some point comes roaring back to life down the bottom of this lineup. So never somebody to at least write off at the bottom of the lineup. If you've got 3 on FanDuel or 4 on DraftKings and you're looking for that last man in, McCormick for the price, especially given his talent and given his production over years past, not uninteresting down there. Justin Verlander, top of the board. Kyle Gibson, playable on DraftKings, but I'll go Justin Verlander, top of the board, then Astros bats against Gibson, then Gibson on DraftKings. The Cardinals bats are like way, way down there somewhere. They'll be contrarian. There are some names in there, but they've been pretty bad, and Verlander is still pretty good. Coors Field. Feltner, Abbott. Is there a need to delve into these pitchers, really? Abbott's got an 18% strikeout rate this year, despite not really giving up many barrels or all that much premium contact. Does give up a lot of launch. So it's a significant fly ball trajectory, which means mistakes can land in the seats. 4.30% home run rate so far. Gave up 2 in his most recent game. Just looking at the home versus road home run output. It's pretty mixed. 2 of his 2 home run games were in home games in that bandbox. But solid handful of those home runs that he's given up have also come on the road. You can see Stuff Plus, not really a fan, 8 points below average. 3.29 ERA is good, but a 4.59 xFIP on the other side. Just an 8% swinging, a lot of contact available, not really putting hitters away. Last year he was significantly better. In 109 and a third over 21 starts, 26.1% strikeout rate. That is a tremendous drop-off. 10.9% swinging down to 8%. Big dip in CSW. I don't know what I'll pull them up. I'm sure there's a big dip in what the Stuff Plus profile looks like. Huh. I guess not. That's really interesting. Despite that success last year, his Stuff Plus actually for the full arsenal graded out to just 87. This year we're at least at that 92. So he's actually seeing an uptick. Significant uptick on his slider, while the fastball went down actually a little bit. The cutter went down a little bit. The change went from a significantly below average pitch at 72 to a league average change at 100. But his slider jumped from a 106, which is nicely above average, to a 127, which is dramatically above average. But we're not getting, but we took a big dip in strikeouts. It's a weird combination of factors. I am fully aware that I'm now delving into a Coors Field pitcher. I just want to see. Like Helen Hunt at the end of Twister when she starts walking out into the tornado. I need to see. Significantly fewer whiffs on the four-seamer. Where's that slider? We're calling it a sweeper on StatCast. That's fine. So sweeper, 24% whiff last year, 24% this year, 29% last year. A little bit of an uptick in spin. Well, I don't want to get too carried away with this. That's an interesting one to delve into at some point, though. I wonder what the horizontal movement looks like. Okay, there it is. So his sweeper, the reason for the uptick in stuff plus on that pitch, went from an 11.7 inch break, horizontal break, which was 2 points below average, to a 14.3 inch break, which is 0.7 above. But that's the only thing that really seems to have improved. And again, we've lost strikeouts overall. So it's just a weird little wrinkle that I had to explore there real quick. But all of that is to say, I don't think you're playing Andrew Abbott all that much. Maybe a few $6,800 darts, just given how bad Colorado is overall. They're throwing in an entirely right-handed lineup that does have some home run hitting quality against him here, though. So I think we're just looking at bats. They're drawing a very aggressive total in Vegas. Vegas is kind of telling us what to do with this game, and that's just take bats on either side. I expect that given the talent gap and given the popularity, the name recognition, the guys like Elly De La Cruz in the lineup, the Reds will probably draw significantly more popularity, despite technically being underdogs slightly in this game, or at least how it looked earlier. I think I agree with that, though. I'm drawn more toward the talent on this side of the board, but there's some interesting bats on this side, and they're cheaper. And if they're going to be lower owned by comparison, I think that makes them a very, very interesting option against this pitcher. Ryan Feltner is not even worth looking at. 5.46 ERA, a 4.18 xFIP. Stuff Plus actually likes his arsenal better if we're really looking at it. Similarly, giving up a decent amount of power, similar low-end strikeout rate. I just hate the matchup here. I don't really want to grab Feltner shares. Even at 55, I don't think there's much on the board for you there. Struck out exactly 4. Oh, no, that's Tyler Anderson. Struck out 1 in his last game. Gave up 5 earned, 7 total runs over 4 1/3 to Cleveland. Had a 6 strikeout game against the Athletics, but that was in Oakland. Held the Rangers to just 2 in Coors Field back on May 11th. 6 innings, 4 strikeouts. That's probably your upside day. I don't really see the reason to go to it. If you're going to Reds bats, TJ Friedl in the leadoff spot, 5,000, 3,300 for him. A lot more talent than what we're seeing from him over the first 43 plate appearances so far this year. Last year, hit 18 home runs, stole 27 bases, had a 116 WRC plus over 556. That's who TJ Friedl really is. Player that I liked coming into this year and then has just missed most of the season with an injury. But there's decent upside there, good bat on ball skills, a lot of speed, decent ability to drive the ball. Striking out a little bit more, walking a little bit more in the tiny, tiny sample. Not a big, premium contact guy, but capable, again, of hitting a few home runs. Elly De La Cruz, 6,500, 4,500. Honestly, that's not a crazy Coors Field tax. 9 home runs, 32 stolen bases, still leads the league in stolen bases, I believe. A lot has cooled for Elly over the last month or so. He was nowhere near the player that he was in the first month of the season. But he's still, overall, the profile looks tremendous, and I think that's going to be a lot of ebb and flow over the next couple seasons while he finds his true, superstar ceiling if he ever gets there. But there's a lot to like, and especially in a Coors Field game, justifiably should be one of the top-owned players on the entire slate. Jeimer Candelario, first and third base eligibility on both sites, 4,800, 3,500. I'll take some shares of that. 186 ISO, 6 home runs. He hasn't been great this season, but he saw a little bit of a power surge lately, starting to catch on for the year, and given a Coors Field game against Ryan Feltner, it seems like a very, very cheap price to pay for his ceiling. Spencer Steer is pretty expensive at 59, 4,000. 6 home runs, 11 stolen bases, just on a 111 WRC+, just a 164 ISO, 234, 346, 398. He's one of their better bats. He hit 23 and stole 15 bases last year, had a 192 ISO, a 118 WRC+, had a very hot start to this year, but has cooled off significantly. It just feels like a big Coors Field tax on really Spencer Steer and only Spencer Steer in this lineup. Everybody else is kind of about where they normally would be. So that's just a little bit of a weird one. If I'm skipping anybody, not on talent, but just if I want to skip over the tax and pay down, I'm happy to do that and leave Spencer Steer a little bit to the public. That said, if he's dramatically low owned because of that, then maybe it does increase the appeal. He also fills 3 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DraftKings. Jake Fraley, 4,900, 3,300, 295, 345, 380, creating runs at a decent clip, 104 WRC+. 1 home run and 9 steals this year, did hit 15 with 21 steals in just 380 opportunities last year. Another interesting power speed kind of a bat from the left side of the plate. They've got a few of these guys in this team. This is a very interesting Reds lineup if they can ever figure everything out. Tyler Stevenson, a playable catcher given this contact profile over time. We've talked about Stevenson a number of times. He is capable of driving the ball and capable of hitting a home run, especially in Coors Field. If he's underowned, that's interesting. On FanDuel especially, considering you can play either one of the other first basemen at third base, outfield, second base, depending on who you're looking at, you can play Stevenson as though he's a somewhat lower end first baseman, but a first baseman with some good power, and he only costs 3,200. I think he'll be underowned for his talent and that price in a Coors Field game on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he'll probably be popular enough at 4,500. That's an effective catcher in a Coors game for a good price. Nick Martini, 39, 32, 4 home runs, a 62 WRC+, a lot of up and down performance, but another affordable lefty bat. Jonathan India, not that good at second base, 3 home runs, 5 steals, capable of stealing a game every now and again, cheap enough in a Coors game, but not my favorite option. Will Benson, I like a lot as a wraparound. 8 home runs, 8 steals. Everything else has been underwhelming so far this year, but a lot of ability to drive the ball. Over 200 plate appearances. Guy's got a 14.7% barrel rate and 48.4% hard hits, a 214 ISO. If people are leaving Will Benson on the table, again, in a Coors Field game, I know I said that like 7 times now, but if Will Benson is left on the table by the field, I will happily gobble up shares. I think he's a very good talent. He strikes out way too much, but he walks a ton. He's got the ability to be more involved than he has been. He's already above average for run creation. The counting stats are great for DFS, and he's too cheap. For the counting stat upside in this ballpark, he's too cheap. If you're going to the Rockies side, which I think is advisable, especially if they're underowned compared to their opponents in a similar spot, Ezequiel Tovar off the top, 5,000, 3,600, 8 home runs, 4 steals, a very solid 297, 329, 481 triple slash, creating runs 15% better than average. Tovar is doing everything they're asking of him this year. He's really kind of rounded into form. He's currently the player that they were expecting him to be. So I think he's a good option off the leadoff spot. Brendan Rodgers, stable at 265, 303, 360. Not great. He's 25% worse than average for run creation, but he's driving the ball a little. 44.4% hard hits. I think there's a little bit of upside there. Elias Diaz, Eloyers Montero, Brenton Doyle, Jacob Stallings, Sean Bouchard, and Hunter Goodman. There's a nice run of potentially sneaky power through that group of hitters. You can see it in the hard hit rates for some of these guys. You can see it in the barrel rates. Decent barrel rates for some of those guys. A couple of underperformers there. I think more of Eloyers Montero than his upside has been so far, or than his output has been so far. 3 home runs in 185 so far this season, a .096 ISO, 11 homers in 307 last year. but a good ability to drive the ball for a $3,300 price tag, $3,000 on DraftKings. Elias Diaz for $4,800 where you have to play catchers. Productive. 4 home runs, a 127 ISO, but creating runs 5% better than average. Hitting over 300 with a 349 on base. From a third hitting catcher in Coors Field. Sign me up. Doyle at 43, 37, 260, 338, 405, 5 homers, 14 steals. Good counting stat output. Stallings, another catcher in this lineup. If you want to pay $600 less to go to Stallings, he's got a good contact profile in a small sample. 83 plate appearances. He's already hit 3 home runs. Very good triple slash in the small sample. 142 WRC plus leads the team. He's not that guy. That won't continue. He's this guy. But he does have a little bit of right-handed pop on the right day. Bouchard, underwhelming so far this year. Got some good minor league numbers, a little bit of right-handed power. Hunter Goodman's got a ton of right-handed power. Hasn't really shined through at the major league level in 56 plate appearances this year. In 77 last year, it didn't play the year before that. But a ton of minor league home runs from the right side. 8.16. You can see it in the model. He's got catcher eligibility. It's on FanDuel. It doesn't really matter. First and outfield eligibility on DraftKings. And 2 position eligibility, let's call it on FanDuel, outfield catcher and first base. Alan Trejo, kind of an afterthought at the bottom of the lineup. Bats all day. If you're completely compelled to roster a pitcher from this game, it's Andrew Abbott, and it's really only on DraftKings. But it's bats on both sides, pretty enthusiastically on either side. Reds are obviously the preference, but they're going to be the more popular. They're also the more expensive. I think the Rockies are very, very playable here. Last 2 games to go, 5:16. So much time before our 6:40 lock time. Let me see what's going on in chat. I haven't been in there in a minute. Zach Porter, I come for Terry's MLB projections and analysis. I stay for the movie references. I love it. One of these days we'll get a movie podcast off the ground. I've been talking about it for years. Got a good idea for how to do one. Art Stanton, someone else has been watching Twister on TV for the 50th time. Yep. If I come across that movie on TV, I will absolutely leave it on. It's if you go with the whole rewatchables theme, the Bill Simmons podcast and everything, it is a perfect fit for that. I think they're going to do that one coming up with Twisters coming out this summer. And I'm also looking forward to Twisters. Unashamedly looking forward to Twisters. Can't wait. Mama likes Matt Waldron as the best pitcher on the slate. Matt Waldron is a tremendous DFS option today. Matt Waldron is not the best pitcher on the slate. Let's get our terminology correct, Mamba. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I like the option quite a bit. He is sitting in my placeholder lineup right now. Melissa's here. What's up, Melissa? I watch Twister whenever it's on too. Almost experienced one last week. Ooh, never seen one in real life. Don't ever really want to. Seems like a really scary proposition. Maybe from far away. That said, through our entire trip to Texas, I was teasing my mom about seeing a Twister on the horizon, telling my dad if we see one, we got to drive toward it. All of that. Dad's also a fan of Twister. I actually literally watched it while on that trip. One of the nights I couldn't sleep in the hotel room, I had it on at 3 o'clock in the morning. I think that was the most recent time I saw it. That was only 2-3 weeks ago. So Waldron, the knuckleballer, just 7,400 on DK, just 7,900 on FanDuel. He's been good. 4.26 ERA is perfectly acceptable. 3.77 xFIP, 24.2% strikeout rate. Going up against this Angels team. Let's see if we got the confirmed here. Doesn't look like. These are the 9 o'clock games now, so it makes sense that we don't have the confirmed. But going up against this team, that whatever they do with the lineup, it's not going to really improve from a 22 and change strikeout rate, and has an opportunity to potentially get worse if a couple other guys are in here. So I think there's a lot of strikeout upside. And then if you think about the profile of this team overall, and I said this about, I forget who, it might have been the Rockies earlier in the season. Just with some of these young hitters, some of these underdeveloped hitters, some of these guys who were more never wases, or missed a significant amount of their window if they're ever going to catch on. It could be a really interesting spot for the knuckleball. I don't want to get too over the moon about that because I don't think it worked that last time I was putting it that way. But we'll just focus on the numbers. It's very difficult to square up a knuckleballer. It's very difficult to generate any kind of exit velocity or hard hit rate. This is he's top 10 in hard hit rate allowed this season, I believe, among qualified pitchers. Slow in, slow out. And that knuckler is coming in at 70, it's a guess, 77 miles an hour. And obviously, you guys know, I'm sure knuckleballs just kind of dance around. They come in with no spin, and they just dance and do weird things physics-wise. But again, when it's coming in at 77, and then he's following that up with a 91 mile an hour four-seamer, so low velo in, it's difficult to generate hard hits and a lot of exit velo out. He's not invulnerable to power, not invulnerable to home runs. He's given up a 2.42% home run rate so far this year, but that's a pretty good mark. Stuff Plus is never going to like him. It's just not going to be designed to like a knuckler. That's not that's not at all within the confines of what Stuff Plus measures. His other pitches, his slider grades out at a 114, actually significantly above average on the slider. Everything else is below average. But again, you're looking at a weak fastball that's a secondary offering, not supposed to be a high-end fastball. And it's never going to measure a knuckler correctly. So I think he's got significant upside. Again, he's in my placeholder lineup at 79 right now. I was hoping to find a way to pay for Gausman, but if that couple $100, that $300 makes a difference, I'm happy to take the Waldron option. I don't think we're all that far off ceiling-wise given the matchup difference. 7,400 versus 8,000 on DraftKings. You could easily convince me that Waldron against the Angels is a better option given the $600 discount than Gausman against the Orioles there. Again, not far off in terms of median projection. There's a gap. It's an appreciable gap, but it's not crazy far off. It's not like you're going down here. And the ceiling is probably pretty similar. So yes, Mamba, I really like Matt Waldron today. Tyler Anderson on the other side, 7,800, 8,800. Going up against the Padres. Don't love the matchup for Anderson. He pitches deep into games. You got to give him that. He's been good at keeping runs off the board this year. A 2.47 ERA is very good over 69 and a third, 11 starts. But you can see that the truth is it should be around a 5. He's got a 4.98 xFIP. Just a 17.1% strikeout rate. He's walked 10.4%. It's got to be an exceptionally low BABIP against, given that whip. Would you believe if I told you he had a 211 batting average on balls in play against? That's where that 2.47 ERA is coming from. You can see Stuff Plus doesn't like the arsenal. It's a fly ball oriented pitcher, gives up fair barrel rate. Last year, that was more problematic for power. Although he's never been tragic for power because he's also decent at limiting hard hits, exit velo. But he's definitely gettable for home run upside. You can see some of that coming through from Fernando Tatis. Manny Machado down to just 5.51, given some of the underperformance so far this year that the model's caught up on. Not a ton of home run threat here. But the Pods are drawing a 4.61 implied total. That's one of the higher marks on the board. So I just don't really see going to Tyler Anderson, especially when he's just mispriced against all these other options. I would just rather have basically everybody around him when he comes in at these prices. It wouldn't completely stun me to see 6 innings of 2-run ball, 4 strikeouts. He struck out exactly 4 in each of his last 4 starts. 5 innings against the Yankees in his most recent. He gave up 1 earned on a home run. He walked 6 in that one. That was a problem, but only 4 hits. 8 innings against Houston at Houston, struck out 4, walked 2, 1 earned run on 6 hits. 7 innings against Texas. Several very good teams in a row, by the way. 7 innings against Texas, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, a home run allowed there, but just 2 hits, 1 earned. 6 2/3 against Kansas City, gave up 3 earned, struck out 4. 6 1/3 against Pittsburgh, gave up 4 earned, struck out 5. The 4 against Pittsburgh is the earned run high of the season, though. And again, he's actually faced really good competition. I do think that it's just a case of all these teams getting unlucky against him. Yeah, I'm not going to allow myself to talk myself into Tyler Anderson, and I'm not going to allow me to talk you into Tyler Anderson. It's not a good option on where he's priced compared to everybody else. Just one of those ones, again. Wouldn't shock me if he came out and had a 16-point ceiling, call it a 30-point FanDuel ceiling, where you're just getting like this median projection plus maybe a quality start bonus. I don't like the Angels' opportunity to give him the win bonus. So I think it's very limited. Wouldn't shock me if he had an okay day, but I think the opportunity for him to win the slate is not great at these prices. If you're rostering Angels bats, Luis Rengifo off the top, 12 stolen bases, 4 homers, having a very nice year in terms of his triple slash over 164. Good enough player. Not really a secret anymore in terms of we used to get a little bit of cheap output out of him from very low ownership. 4,500, 3,000 at the top of the lineup, performing like this, multi-position eligible. He's getting a little bit of attention from people who go to the Angels, but he's well worth it if you go that way. Mickey Moniak, 8.63 in the home run model. Some actually decent output for home run upside from these Angels against Waldron here. Some of that might come from history. What does he have history-wise? Yeah, had a little bit of problem last year. So some of that's probably coming from there. I don't know that I buy fully the power upside here. Taylor Ward's been good for home runs, 11 on the season, a 201 ISO, has an 8.78 in the home run model. Moniak only has 2 with 2 stolen bases and 138 plate appearances. Also been pretty bad for the triple slash, pretty bad for power and run creation. Don't love that option. Willie Calhoun, 35-24. Okay, average, pretty weak on base. No real power output so far. 91 WRC plus over 105. I think they're rapidly finding out why Willie Calhoun was looking for a job. Kevin Pillar, still been really good. 333, 89, 588, a 258 ISO, 174 WRC plus, 6 homers, 6 steals. One of the best stretches of his entire career. 44-31, effective enough, playable enough. One of the veteran bats in this lineup. Logan O'Hoppy's got catcher power. 3,800, not a great spot for home runs, but he leads the team at 9.29. He's got 7 on the season. Joe Adell has 11. Everything else is cratered around the power and the speed, but the counting stat upside is definitely real and definitely still there. 3,600, 2,800 across sites. He's cheap. He's affordable. The idea of some bat on ball for Adell, he's certainly got the power to generate home run upside against Matt Waldron. So does O'Hoppy. So does Taylor Ward. But it's not an ideal spot, and it's not great in terms of his ability to correlate, contribute runs otherwise. Zach Neto, Luis Guillorme, kind of weak bottom end. Neto's been okay. Guillorme is really just here for defense. On the Padres side, Luis Urias at the top of the lineup, one of the best hitters in the league, 340, 376, 409. No real power, but a tremendous hitter, tremendous hit tool, back control, on base skills, correlated scoring option. 30% better than average for run creation, and honestly still underpriced for his skill set and for the position hitting ahead of Fernando Tatis. Tatis, 53-37. He's cheap himself. 10 home runs on the season, a 170 ISO, 28% better than average for run creation. Underperforming his skill set overall, underperforming previous seasons in a small sense, but still tons and tons of premium contact. No problems with strikeouts or walks or anything like that. So everything over here is fine. Things over here will get better, I think. Profar, I would love to say that we're starting to cool, but it doesn't look like we are. 247 plate appearances, 325, 421, 488. Gotta say, he's one of my biggest misses of the season, if not my biggest miss. I don't think anybody saw it coming. I don't think anybody believed it was real early on, but you got to start at least believing a little bit. 14.2% strikeouts, 13% walks off the top, 40.9% hard hits. He's been tremendous. Creating runs 67% better than average. Still very cheap. I would have a problem with it if he was more than his current pricing, but yeah, actually at FanDuel 33, I don't love. But I think it's okay. 42 on DraftKings is still cheap for the output he's had all season. So playable at worst. Machado 49, 3,000. I'm still buying the upside. Another player, I don't think we're that far off the mark. Premium contact is around where it should be. Strikeouts are up a little bit, but not incredibly bad. I haven't looked at a lot of the underlying stuff, but I still like the upside for the next couple hundred plate appearances for Machado. Solano's cheap, 2,800, 2,300. A lot of bat skill there. 13.2% strikeouts so far this season. Not a ton of premium contact, but capable enough of driving the ball. Over 53 plate appearances, he's at 404, 472, 532. That's productive. Not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination. Not going to continue a run like that. But effective enough for the cheap pricing. I like him better as a $2,300 second baseman on FanDuel than I do as a $2,800 third baseman on DraftKings. On DK, you get Cronenworth at second, 4,100 over there. He's 3,100 at first on FanDuel, 262, 324, 449. Creating runs 25% better than average. Easily playable from down there. Easily playable if he climbs the lineup. Ha-Sung Kim has been kind of rough, but the counting stat output is still fine. The run creation is still 10% better than average. 7 home runs, 13 steals. Just underwhelming in terms of the average, really. The on base is even fine. Not driving the ball, well, 5.3% barrels, 34.3% hard hits. Actually up a little bit. What was his ISO last year? It was only 138 with the 17 home runs. All right. So I guess we're not that far off the mark outside of just the batting average with Kim. Everything else is right where it's supposed to be. So a little bit of misfortune in terms of hits dropping in for Kim. He'll be fine. Luis Campusano, 37-26. Playable catcher, not a priority. And Jose Azocar, another player just kind of here for defense. Matt Waldron, Padres bats. Really nothing from the other side. A few hedge stacks of Angels is fine. A couple darts of Tyler Anderson from an awkward mid-level price on DraftKings is okay, but it's not okay. It's not good. It's not a gigantic mistake, but it's probably not going to help you win. Which means it's probably a gigantic mistake, really. The hell am I talking about? So we know we've got the opener coming in this one. Eric Miller, the lefty, going to open for San Francisco. We do have the confirmed Diamondbacks lineup for our last game here. Ryan Nelson, 16.5% strikeouts, a 6.02 ERA, but a 4.30 xFIP under that. 6.9% walks, but a 1.76 whip is an absurd difference. Is he giving up like better than a 400 on base or a 400 BABIP? 384. It's pretty high. Not sitting here trying to convince anybody that Ryan Nelson is good. He's demonstrably not good. Is he good enough to get through 5 clean innings and give me a good shot at a win bonus for just 5,800 on DraftKings against a fairly high strikeout Giant squad that has kind of underperformed their way through the season? Maybe. Last time out, faced Texas at Texas, gave up 4 earned on 5 hits. That's not really going to get it done when you only strike out 3 and you walk 3. How about against the Dodgers, the game before that? At Los Angeles, only 5 innings, but it was a better 5 innings. He struck out 5. He walked 3 and gave up 5 hits, but no earned runs. No runs at all. Just 4 innings against Detroit, he got obliterated. 8 earned on 11 hits, gave up, struck out 4, no home run. He's only given up 4 home runs all season. Strikeout high of 7 came against Atlanta at Atlanta back on April 7th. Gave up 2 home runs in that game, 3 earned on 5 hits. There's a couple quality starts in here. There's a couple okay performances. He's very, very low end, but I do think he's good enough to give you a semi-interesting start here, given the $5,800 price tag on DraftKings. I wouldn't play him at 67 on FanDuel. I don't think you've got a good shot at a quality start. But I think 58, you've got a good enough shot at the win bonus. You've got a good enough shot at 5 innings and 4 or 5 strikeouts. I'm not even going to tell you 6 strikeouts. This Giants team, this version of the lineup strikes out at a 24.8% clip. Same group of hitters last year was at 25.8. So there's believability for the 5 innings, 5 strikeouts game, but I don't think you've got much ceiling beyond that. If I was playing 5.5 as the line, I have no idea what his strikeout prop is. It's probably 4.5. Maybe even lower. But if it was 5.5, I would take the under. Even if I had a guarantee of 5 innings. Even if I had a guarantee of 6 innings, I would probably take the under. But at 58, that's kind of intriguing. There's a lot of bargain bin options on the board today, though. You do not need to do it by any stretch of the imagination on DraftKings. but that's where the play would be. Spencer Howard coming in as the bulk reliever. I don't see the need to go there at all on either site. Maybe if he was 4,000, we could have the conversation on DraftKings. Doesn't seem worth it to me. Last time out, did go 4 innings, struck out 1 in 4. 14.3% swinging, was tremendous in that opportunity. But there's a reason that we haven't really seen him. 49 and 2/3 innings back in 2021 over 15 starts. Had a 22.7% strikeout rate with an 11.8% walk rate that year. 4.66 xERA with a 4.98 xFIP under a 7+ ERA. Got himself traded to Texas. 37 and 2/3 over 8 starts, 10 appearances in the following year. Even worse. 17.9% strikeout rate, 7.41 ERA with a 4.81 xFIP, 5.53 xERA. We have not seen it with any kind of consistency at the major league level from Spencer Howard. You're getting pretty significant home run numbers from some of these interesting Diamondbacks. Let's see what's actually in the lineup. Corbin Carroll back toward the bottom of the lineup, notably. That's interesting. Ketel Marte leadoff, 4,900, 3,200. That is too cheap for a second baseman who has 12 home runs already this season. Why is he only 4,900 on DraftKings? What am I missing? 11.7% barrels, 54.8% hard hits from a second baseman that he's already turned into 12 home runs at 232 ISO. He's created runs 31% better than average. That's like the bargain of the day on DraftKings, especially in the leadoff spot. Gabriel Moreno hitting second over there, 3,200. Is supposed to be capable enough. We haven't seen a ton of it with the bat. He did hit 284, 339, 408 last year, only 7 home runs and 6 steals. But this was effective in terms of his on base, his average, demonstrable bat control ability there. Hasn't been good in those departments so far this year, but there's some talent for only 3,200 hitting second today. That makes Gabriel Moreno really interesting in the Diamondbacks lineup on DraftKings. I think he's playable on FanDuel, but I'm not necessarily inclined to double up first base util for Moreno. And I'm really not looking to play him ahead of Christian Walker. Very interesting on DraftKings, though. Jock Peterson, love him. 11.63, pretty sure I made him the home run pick of the day. 7 home runs on the season, 305, 404, 542, 237 ISO. I wanted to pick him up for this week because they're facing a few weak righties, but I didn't have the opportunity given my roster set up in the Dynasty League for this week. So, unfortunately, he's going to do whatever he does today without benefiting my Dynasty team, but I plan to have him for DFS because I want to catch that home run. Very, very solid upside. 11.83 for Christian Walker. He's got 12 home runs this season, a 205 ISO, 260, 357, 465. He's striking out a little bit more, but he's also walking a little bit more. He's also barreling the ball more frequently. He's also got a higher hard hit rate than last year. I'll trade a few strikeouts. I like Christian Walker a lot because he is typically fairly low strikeout in exchange for the power upside. But if I have to sacrifice, 4 or 5 points of strikeout rate for an uptick in power from a guy who's already hitting 30+ home runs, I'll absolutely take it, and I'll be enthusiastic about it at just 5,000 on the DraftKings slate. 36 is correct on FanDuel. Lourdes Gurriel, 39, 3,000. It's pretty cheap for a lot of power upside, a decent multi-hit day upside. He hasn't been great, but he only strikes out 18.5% of the time this year, 17.4 last year with a low walk rate. 41.6% hard hits this year, down from 46 last year. Does have 7 home runs. Just struggling in the results department, really. But I think there's tons and tons of any given slate upside for him. 3,500, 2,600 for Jake McCarthy. If you don't like Gurriel, a little bit cheaper for McCarthy. He's hitting for a better average, getting on at a better clip. That's what he does. He hits for an okay average, and he definitely gets on base well. And he's got good stolen base upside, 7 stolen bases with a little bit of power from the left side of the plate against Spencer Howard once he gets into the game. I like that upside. 112 WRC plus over 140 plate appearances for a little bit cheaper of an outfielder. Jake McCarthy's interesting. I actually plugged him into my placeholder. Took the discount from Gurriel, took the discount from Corbin Carroll, and that was when I thought Carroll was hitting up here. Eugenio Suarez, 36-28, 4 home runs, 107 ISO, 67 WRC+. Dramatically underperforming the power expectation so far. Hasn't been great for this team.
Corbin Carroll, dramatically performing the everything expectation so far, has been awful for this team over 251. Any given slate switch throw kind of upside, but I think there are definitely reasons to be concerned at this point about Corbin Carroll ever finding it again this season. Blaze Alexander for 34-24. I like the kid. 269, 336, 407, a track record of having good OPS numbers on base plus slugging throughout the minor leagues, having a little bit of power upside, decent speed. Get on base, get correlated, and back to the top of the lineup. I think he's very interesting at shortstop for 24 on FanDuel, shortstop on DraftKings for 34 on a team that doesn't have a different shortstop option. I would kind of ignore his other multi-positions because I don't necessarily, well, I guess you could play him at third as a cheap third baseman on FanDuel, but I don't really love him there. There's a lot of other third base options. And then second base, you're not going there over Ketel Marte all that often. If you go to the Giants against Ryan Nelson, which I think is perfectly playable, they're not all that expensive. There's decent upside there. And again, Nelson is not good. For every Nelson share that I took for 5,800 as a total dart throw on DraftKings, I'd probably want like 2 Giants shares. But that said, I don't think you have to get carried away because I wouldn't do the Nelson play all that many times. Luis Matos from the top of the lineup, just 11.6% strikeouts, 3.5% walks, tons of batted ball upside there. It's only resulted in 220, 244, 329, a 61 WRC+. But there's some talent there. There's some ability to drive the ball and put it in play from the top. If he's in the leadoff spot, he's not bad. Yastrzemski, 3,100, 2,600. 5 home runs on the season. We know there's more left-handed power upside than what we've seen. There's more overall quality than what we've seen this year from Yaz. Definitely better ability to put bat on ball than what he's shown us. Against Ryan Nelson, with all the contact that's going to be available, it's an interesting enough upside spot. 7.64 in the home run model. Thairo Estrada, 3,800, 3,000. Cheap for a guy who's got 8 home runs and just at league average for run creation, 170 ISO. Underperforming his triple slash significantly. But for the talent that we've seen in years past, I feel like he's pretty cheap on DraftKings at 38. Matt Chapman, 4,800, 3,100. 8 home runs for him, a 172 ISO, 5 steals, 107 WRC+. Kind of surged his way through May, or at least the early part of May. Having a decent enough year. Very good batted ball profile over time for Matt Chapman. He's cheap, 4,800, 3,100. Patrick Bailey, 3,200 for a hard-hitting catcher, 298, 354, 465. 4 home runs on the season. Jorge Soler, only 6 home runs. Bailey's been better between the two. Oddly. Soler really underperforming, but he's gotten very cheap. 4,000, 2,700. Any given slate, multi-home run upside. Against a pitcher like this, there could easily be a lurking Jorge Soler power outburst. 2,700 is probably worth finding out. If you're stacking Giants, you're not skipping Jorge Soler against this pitcher. Trenton Brooks, 2,500, 2,000 dead min price. When we looked him up the other day, he actually kind of looked a little bit sneaky, a little bit interesting based on some minor league track record. Hasn't done much in his 8 plate appearances so far, but 2,500 dead min on FanDuel. He's playable. Elliot Ramos has been actually really good. 3 home runs over 93 plate appearances, a 131 WRC+, mashing the ball when he's made contact. A couple of those home runs have been very long home runs. Kind of interesting. Down lineup. More interesting if he happens to climb the lineup. Brett Wisely, 2,800, 2,400, 1 home run, 1 steal, an effective 37 plate appearances. Last year, an ineffective 131 plate appearances. We'll see where the truth lands. Diamondbacks bats way, way up top. One of my favorite stacks on the day. Giants bats after that. Really only DraftKings total dart throw, bargain bin Ryan Nelson in very, very small quantities. No other pitching and no other pitching spot in this game. And that'll do it. Bring us back to the pitching board here real quick. I'll pull up chat, see if there's any questions, see if I any second buys. Mama says, question, my model predicts Colorado with the most runs, but no home runs at the top. Would you stack Colorado bats or look for leverage on home runs with another team? It's an interesting question, Mamba. For DraftKings, I'd probably roll with Colorado and all the implied hits and run scoring. that would be involved in that. And then on FanDuel, I would probably roll mostly with Colorado and then see if I could find a second stack or a couple one-offs that might recoup some of that power upside. Or I would just be focused on like lower owned Hunter Goodman types that do, I think, probably have some home run upside that's not necessarily reflected in your model. I'm not entirely sure at all how your model works. I'm not at all sure. But like in mine, Hunter Goodman's getting a little bit of credit for what his power is supposed to be. That's this game. So you can see 8.16. We're getting a pretty decent home run mark there. 8.58 for Eleuders Montero, who is similarly, I think, maybe underappreciated for some power upside. And there is significant reason to believe with all this premium contact on a fly ball trajectory that Andrew Abbott will have some issues keeping the ball in the yard against some of these righties. So the way I would approach that, if you're not looking for it from another team, would be just to be sure to include a couple of these right-handed power bats that maybe are getting ignored, especially Goodman. I expect down lineup, probably under-owned by the slate for what the power opportunity truly looks like. Also know that there's a significant opportunity for those guys to just give you zeros. Zach Wheeler, Tariq Skubal, pick your poison 1-1A off the top of the board. They're both excellent. They're both expensive, but they're both worth it. Grayson Rodriguez, expensive on FanDuel, also totally worth it. Looks just like the other two. Aligns well with them. I would take the discount and run with it. I'm happy to do that on that site. And then at 9,400, you're getting a very, very nice discount from the top two options for not that much median sacrifice and just matching ceiling, if not a better ceiling. Kevin Gausman, another spot. I'll take the discount. Even with the matchup on a pitcher that I know has 30% plus strikeout rate upside on any given slate. 6-7 innings is totally in play for Kevin Gausman. Very, very good pricing here. Mackenzie Gore, a lot of upside, just expensive compared to where a lot of other options are, but definitely wouldn't shock me if a couple of these guys go bust. Mackenzie Gore could easily slip through that and win the day, even at 9,000. This is a decent price for him. This is high, but effective. I don't mind the option even at that price. I like the option at the DraftKings number. Love the Verlander option on both sites. Given a $600 discount with a better matchup, I prefer Verlander to Mackenzie Gore on FanDuel, but I prefer Gausman for $1,000 less than Verlander, even with a tougher matchup. I think there's more upside there, or at least enough that it's paid for by that price. 8,800 is an aggressively good price for Verlander. Strong, strong option on DraftKings. You consider that an SP1, you could easily go these two. Taking on a little bit of risk, sure, but I mean, that's kind of what it's about, right? McGill, another good option on DraftKings anyway. 7,200 is very, very cheap for his upside against that Washington team. 6-7 innings of quality pitching with a handful of strikeouts. It's easily on the board for McGill. 96 is probably not all that far off the actual mark for like his talent in this matchup. It's just an awkward fit on the board on FanDuel. Love Waldron at 79 on FanDuel. Love him at 74 on DraftKings. Spectacular matchup. Andrew Abbott, despite where he projects out and how it kind of looks on the board here, I really don't like it that much. 74.68. I think you can throw a few darts at it on DraftKings. I really wouldn't on FanDuel. Kyle Gibson, he's in the bargain bin because of that 6,500 price, and at 85 on FanDuel, like I said when we were talking about it, I think you're looking at median and maybe a quality start bonus on FanDuel. I don't like their opportunity to give him a win bonus on DK, so I think you're a little hamstrung from that. So I just don't know how much ceiling is really here for Kyle Gibson. I don't think he's going to be the individual slate winner at pitcher, and especially when I can get some options for less that I like a lot better. Just kind of leaves him on the board against a really good low strikeout Houston lineup. Tyler Anderson, again, awkward price fit. Wouldn't totally stun me if he had an okay, effective enough day. Couple of runs over 6 innings, just a couple of strikeouts, but no real payoff for that investment. I don't like him for DFS. Bryce Wilson, knowing he's working behind an opener, takes away any shot at takes away a lot of the shot at the win bonus here. 6,200 on DK is a little bit rough going up against those Phillies. I don't see the need to do it. Ryan Nelson, I do think you could throw the dart a few times at 5,800 on DraftKings. It's not pretty. It's one of those darts that probably, you hit one of your friends in the foot with it or something as it tails off and misses the board completely. But he's had a couple effective enough starts, and there are a lot of strikeouts there for him. So for 58, you maybe get there. Evaldi's not going to give you enough innings, certainly not on FanDuel. If you had a guarantee of 5, it would still be a little bit rough on DraftKings, but at least the price would be okay. And then Howard and Feltner are just kind of hard-nosed. Take a look at the home run list, and we are out of here. Coming up on 5:50, under an hour to the start of the slate. Got to get the projections updated. Some good home run marks, but not a ton of guys over the magic number, but a stretch of them from Arizona, that's for sure. I really like that Arizona spot. I like the obvious guys from Houston for some home run upside. Pete Alonso on the Mets kind of hanging here by himself. Schwarbs hanging out up there from the Phillies. Harper not far behind. Remember, they're going to face the lefty in the first plate appearance, but he's not a high-end lefty. He's not a high strikeout lefty, so just allow those guys to put bat on ball and good things happen. So I'm not really worried about it. Gunnar Henderson from the top of the Orioles lineup looking pretty good. Some of the Angels, again, sneaking through for power, but most of that comes from previous track record with Waldron. I would not really sweat it that much, considering how difficult it is to hit knuckleballs for home runs. Oddly, no tremendous standouts from Colorado and Cincinnati. You do get those righties. The Eloy Montero at 8.5. Hunter Goodman at 8.16. This is why I was saying McMahon, I wish he was in the lineup, even with the lefty on the hill. He's been their best player, and he was rating out pretty well. There's Joey Gallo at 8.05. So maybe a little bit lighter of a day for power, but a lot of run-scoring opportunity. And, Mamba, going back to your question there, that does kind of jibe with what you were just saying. It is a diminished opportunity for home runs maybe than we'll see in other days this week with this matchup in Coors Field. But you see that a decent amount of the time. Coors Field does have home run upside for sure, but Coors Field is also gigantic and leads to doubles upside and triples upside and just a lot of offensive production just in general. So it's not just all about home runs there. So it's just kind of interesting. Colin Sutherland, how bare bones is playing all three of the Mets small sample guys, Vientos, Iglesias, Torrens. You only have one hitter there. Mark Vientos is a very good young power hitting prospect. Iglesias, what does Iglesias do? Let me remind myself before I say that. Yeah, Iglesias is a career 279, 319, 382 hitter with a 103 ISO. He's hit 47 home runs in 4,049 plate appearances. Doesn't strike out, puts the ball in play, but not with much contact or anything behind it. So you're really, and Luis Torrens is just kind of a low-end backup catcher talent. So you're really pretty thin there. Are you doing it here or here? Curious. The fact that, even at the low prices, that you're really not buying much quality there. This is Iglesias. That was an okay. This is your upside. Maybe a decent average, but only 3 home runs, 2 steals, and 85 WRC plus, even hitting 292 that year. This was Torrens. 3 home runs in 166. No real power to speak of. There's a reason you don't really know those names, But Vientos is good. Love the premium contact in a small sample. Love what he did with the bat last year. Good track record of power through the minor leagues. Outright won the third base job for them now. So I like him. But yeah, it's a little bit rough, a little bit bare bones, as you said there, Colin. Maybe if you wanted to go Vientos there as a one-off and then just find you a $2,900 second baseman and a $2,200 catcher, I'm sure we could do better than that. Hell, I could give you $2,900 Kiebert in exchange for $2,900 Jose Iglesias on the other side of this game. One off Vientos, one off Kiebert, and now we need a $2,200 second baseman. I give you Connor Norby from the bottom of the Orioles lineup. You're going 3 one-offs. It's not the ideal approach to that. But considering that you're getting Norby for the dead min, now you've also got 200 more to spend on one of those other options if you wanted to. Or on a better pitcher. Where else do you got 22? There was another cheap second baseman that I liked. I just forget who the hell it was. Guillaume's not an option. Renifo, too expensive. Alexander's more expensive than I was remembering. That's probably how I would do it. If you're okay with taking options 3 one-offs in that spot, I assume you have like a 5-man, and then you were looking to go like 5-3 or like 4-3 or something like that. If you don't mind spreading it out, I think that's an interesting way to spend your 29 by Kiebert's contact. It's not ideal, but we're buying a $2,900 catcher. He's definitely going to be better than Luis Torrens for 22 in the 9 spot, even with the correlation considered. And then Iglesias, you can jump to again to the hotshot rookie from the Orioles and hope for the best from the last spot in the lineup for 2,000. Dennis Forgy dropping in with the last minute Norbit reference from the bottom of Eddie Murphy's film canon. Colin saying just my initial idea to get Mets and Reds. Yeah, it's not a bad instinct. But there might be other similarly priced spots that'll pay you off better than these two. These two are the concerns. So obviously, cue the 2 home run day for Luis Torrens. Now that I've firmly tried to talk you off of it, but you're not getting a ton of upside there. So with that in mind, gang, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff. Check out acemine.io and so on and so forth. Dennis with another zinger to end the show. Usually his pickup line. If you don't mind spreading it out. Not bad. Good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody go win something. I will see you tomorrow. Projections update will be momentary. See you.